some. Oh. Hey there, Jordan Chariton, live with Zeynab, Peter Hager, and his alternate persona will be joining us soon. State of the Union, my least favorite thing to cover in politics because it is the buffet. I can't curse in the new YouTube algorithm. If you curse in the first, what is it, 10 seconds? Who knows? It is the
10 minutes.
How long?
10 minutes.
Oh boy. So the ultimate buffet of BS is the State of the Union, whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president. And we will be responding to the platter in real time of President Biden's pep rally of accomplishments. This time will be a little bit different. Obviously, Kevin McCarthy, who sold his soul to become speaker, he'll be in the speaker chair. Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, who it seems that the Democratic Party is politically shanking. I don't know if you guys saw that New York Times piece that came out this week. That is classic Democratic Party trying to throw Kamala Harris under the bus and probably try to get her off the ticket if they can. But Biden, we could expect from the likes of it, and smash that like button, share this live stream. We'll be here for the next hour or so until he's done. We could expect a boisterous pep rally on the, quote, booming economy, because he's already been doing it since the jobs report came out Friday. So we'll get into that. I'm sure we could expect him to make the bipartisan infrastructure deal into the new, into the new Deal and play that one up, even though that was a privatization scheme. I'm sure he will be talking about the quote unquote Inflation Reduction Act, which let us know in the chat if it's improving your inflation. And by the way, if I sound a little kooky, it's because it's way past my bedtime. I have a newborn and I've been going to bed about 8:30, 9 o'clock over the last 2 months. So it's past my bedtime, but here for you, the people. And he's definitely going to go through, his, I think, inflated performance as far as bringing jobs back to America, particularly manufacturing. There's some things he'll note that we could give him credit for, but there's a lot more that will be definitely inflated, exaggerated, or outright made up. And Colin did us the honor of making this graphic because I think this is important. You're definitely not going to hear this on MSNBC tonight, CNN, probably not even Fox because they don't particularly care about these policies. But here is a short list of policies Biden ran on that he has not delivered. We will definitely bring this up throughout the night. Obviously, a $15 minimum wage, which Zaina and Peter, I'd love your thoughts because at this point, I'd say that's the conservative position. With inflation, I don't really think $15 minimum wage is really what we should be pushing for anymore. Public option, he abandoned out of his verbal encyclopedia a long time ago. He ran on ending drilling on public land. He has increased drilling on public land. Ran on the PRO Act, which clearly he's done nothing on. Police reform, we put reform in quotes because as we're seeing, we don't think this can be reformed. $2,000 checks became $1,400 and a kick in the ass. A lot of people don't remember, Zaina, he ran during the Democratic primary in the debate against Bernie. He said COVID care would be free, meaning if you go to the hospital for COVID infection or anything, the treatment would be free. Well, go talk to the people, including Steve Grumbine, who were nearly bankrupt from that hospital bill after COVID care, child tax credit. This one, you give them, a half clap, got it for a year. But of course, he let President Manchin and Vice President Sinema sabotage that. He did not fight whatsoever to extend that because he, in my view, doesn't really truly in his bones believe in these policies and doesn't want to fight for them. Subsidized child care, that went out the window, and ending right to work laws. So this is just a couple that we came up with over the last 15 minutes. I'm sure there's more we forgot. You could let us know in the live chat if there's ones we're missing. But these are key things, because say what you want, Peter and Zaina, about Donald Trump. He was full of shit, but he did try at least to deliver on the things he ran on. They were pretty regressive policies, but he did try and follow through on a lot of those regressive policies.
I totally followed through, and I won bigly, and I'll be back in 24, believe me. No, you can't have any of those policies because it's all socialism. So, we must stop the horrors that is socialism. They voted on it, and I am sure that the president will make it very clear tonight that no matter how bad things get, at least we're not socialists.
Possibly. Zaina, your thoughts? Because to me, and I fault, frankly, Bernie and the progressives for this, because I never trusted Joe Biden while he was running that he was actually going to push for a $15 minimum wage. He's never in his career as a senator been like a champion for higher minimum wage. At least he's never done anything to make that happen. We should also remember a $15 minimum wage, if it happened today, would be staggered. So it would take like 5 years for it to be implemented. It would go up bit by bit each year. But in the original CARES Act, which was the beginning of his term in 2021, he said, let me full screen it. He blamed the parliamentarian, who's I'm supporting the Manchin and the parliamentarian, if you can see that behind me.
Oops, wrong one. There we go.
No, look behind me. I put it up above the flag.
There you go.
Oh, didn't get it.
Yeah. Now you got it. So he
you want one for yourself,
Yeah. He supported Manchin. He cited the parliamentarian why he couldn't do a $15 minimum wage. Of course, that was nonsense. The parliamentarian is not a government official. It's not elected. Trump actually fired the parliamentarian under him. The opinion of the parliamentarian is like the rest of us. Everyone's got one. It's, I'm trying not to curse. But it's not binding. So Biden could have blew off the parliamentarian, put a $15 minimum wage in the original CARES Act. I think it would have gone a long way into the midterms for it not to have been believed that it would have been a red wave. But he abandoned that because his donors, Democratic donors, don't want a $15 minimum wage. Public option
promised $2,000 checks, and he delivered $1,600 checks. I mean, it wasn't 2,000, but he delivered them to us.
Right.
Biden couldn't even do the bare minimum during a pandemic. Not to say Trump's a better president, not to say that, to me, there's not a whole heck of a lot of fundamental differences, just as Biden promised. But we haven't seen any of that.
I think Trump
and the Build Back BS plan, he cut everything out of and basically blamed Joe Manchin. But there were several things that passed the House that skirted past the Senate that he vetoed. So
yes,
it falls on his back as well.
I think Trump was just better at giving better lip service. He did a really good job of that, even when he was in the White House. Biden's like, come on, man, I can't give you anything.
Yeah, I think right now what you're seeing, and Zaina, if we could show the Associated Press poll, which is, I know it's 2 years out, but damn, this is really bad if you are an incumbent president that tonight is going to put up a plethora of BS about how great things are and how the economy is doing great and how, people should feel it. If you can go down to show the graph, I mean, look at that. Democrats, you have 37% of Democrats want Biden to run again. That's really bad. 62%, I'll full screen it here. 62% don't want him to run. And then, of course, the voting group that decides the elections, independents, 88% do not want Biden to run again. 12% of independents do want him to run again. So that's overall 78% don't want him to run again. 22% do. But I look at that Democratic Party number. I don't really see that getting much better because inflation, they could cite whatever numbers they want. And thank you for the super chat. Keep those coming. We're going to read them throughout the night. We really could use your help because we're trying to plan some other reporting trips. But Zaina, in a Democratic primary, he might get challenged by, it seems like Marianne Williamson or maybe somebody else, but that's pretty bad. I think he is open to those numbers mean he's open to a primary challenge and vulnerable. Doesn't mean he's going to lose, but at least a weak front runner. And I don't see it improving because it's going to be gridlock with Republicans having the House. They've already passed up their opportunities to do anything structural on a minimum wage, a UBI, jobs programs. So I don't really see those numbers getting better, and I don't really see inflation materially getting better because most of it's corporate price gouging, which Biden hasn't done anything to stop.
Yeah, I think Biden is just as vulnerable as Jimmy Carter was in 1980, as LBJ was in '68. In '68, it was Eugene McCarthy who first got in there and started to cause trouble, and then the next thing you know, Bobby Kennedy jumps in, and it's really a primary. And then right after the New Hampshire primary, LBJ drops out, and we all know it was a complete circus that year, as it was in 1980. I think whoever ends up getting in, whether it is Marianne or whoever else may ultimately decide to get in, you have your heavy hitters that are just kind of waiting in the background to get their shot, whether it is Gavin Newsom, Mayo Pete, and even Vice President Harris. It's going to really just depend on, what the waters are like over the next 6 to 12 months. And if they sense that he keeps getting weakened by, challengers that really don't have a lot of financial infrastructure behind them, they're going to seize an opportunity, because right now, if I'm putting money on the table, DeSantis or Trump, that's most likely who's going to be the next president. So, from their perspective, it's got to be, well, if we're going to have Joe, we don't really stand much of a chance. If we have an opening to try to get in there, I think that's what they're going to be looking for over the next several months.
Yeah. And Zeynab, if we could show kind of a lightning round while we have a couple minutes till he walks in. Americans not feeling the impact of the Biden, quote, agenda. So this is a ABC Washington Post poll. And these numbers are pretty bad. It's similar to the AP. But poll finds that 62% of Americans think Biden has accomplished not very much or little or nothing during his presidency, while 36%.
I got a paywall.
All right.
Sorry, WAPO. WAPO has me on a paywall.
Hold on. I can do it. There we go. Americans not feeling impact of Biden agenda. The poll finds that 62% of Americans think Biden has accomplished not very much or little or nothing during his presidency, while 36% say he's accomplished a great deal or a good amount. What I think is reflective on this, and we don't have enough time before the speech starts, we could talk about it after, but I think the cumulative effect of 30 years of neoliberalism is starting to take its toll on the American people. And I think they're finally not buying into the bullshit anymore. Because how could you possibly feel the fairy dust that he's going to put out there tonight when 30% of people's 30% of people's income right now is going to rent. Housing is through the roof because Wall Street is buying up housing all over this country. We know about gas, groceries, still pretty high. And people significantly went into debt, even more during COVID, charging up their credit cards to avoid getting, kicked out of their apartments and et cetera. So most people right now, contrary to the unemployment, and I wasn't on during your segment, you and Steve, but I would also note he's leaving out, there's 4 million people right now out of the workforce because of long COVID. So that has something to do with the unemployment rate going down. This is from NBC. Up to 4 million people may be out of work due to long COVID, new research suggests. So if millions of people are no longer looking for work because they're disabled because of the Trump and then the Biden policy of letting it rip with zero mitigation, well, the unemployment number is going to be artificially lowered because millions of people aren't looking for work. That's how unemployment works. That's why it's always been a gaslighting way for the media and politicians to try and present the strength or weakness of the economy. The true strength or weakness of the economy is not the unemployment number or GDP growth. I would argue it's this bad boy right here, which I like to show. Here's your economy. That's it. That's not just Joe Biden's fault, but this is the United Corporations of America economy for the last 40 years. That goes all the way to 2018. It's worse since 2018. So They could cite the unemployment number. They could cite GDP. They could cite the stock market. But the economy is basically a giant grand bank robbery of our money being stolen and going to the top. And people are not feeling any of the relief that Biden and the Democratic Party are going to sell tonight. And let's not give the Republicans a pass because they're not any better. Part of why they lost, I would say, in the midterms, other than obviously the overturning of Roe v. Wade, was simply put, all they were doing was condemning the Democratic policies, but they weren't presenting what were they going to do to improve inflation? What were they going to do to lower gas? They didn't have any meat to the bone for any of that. Any parting thoughts before Biden starts? Because I think he's walking in now. Yeah, he's walking in now.
Look at Cinema.
What's she?
She's so pathetic. So desperate to be seen.
Is she dressed as a bumblebee?
Yeah, I guess you could call it that. Why don't you just put the black stripes right across and then...
That's some Hunger Game vibes right there.
Oh, she's just asking to, like, get bull rushed by somebody in the crowd, although no one's really going to do that there.
Colin, how do we do it where it's all three of us on... There we go.
I got it. Okay. There you go. He's got it. So it's just, this is a campaign speech. Preparing for 2024, it's not the State of the Union because they're not really going to tell us anything about the State of the Union. So it's going to be an interesting sales pitch to watch. I'm interested, too, to see the response of mainstream media after this to his tone and how presidential he was without talking about the actual substance of the speech, which inevitably will happen, and how strong he appeared. So we'll see how it goes.
And can I ask you, Zeynab, because I think an important element here, you know, most of the media that covers these things, almost like, you know, it's like the high school prom contest with judges. They live in New York and DC, some in LA. They're not in Appalachia like you. Can you kind of talk about Biden's strong economy? How's it doing out there in Appalachia?
Jobs are down. Temp work is way up. That's something I talk about a lot. Steve and I talked about it on the show today, where the companies that have come into the state, they've de-unionized. They have some legacy union left over, but a lot of the new workers that they're bringing in through temp agencies that take 30 to 50% of the wages. So we're not seeing a lot of growth here. We have a housing crisis. We do have folks from other areas, from upstate, from out of Maine, Michigan, Ohio, other places that, you know, sell their property up there and come and buy it cheap in Kentucky. So it's driven up our home costs to where a lot of our folks here are renters and not homeowners. So we also have a huge student loan debt bubble that jobs never surfaced for, as well as a ton of businesses that closed because of COVID. So we're hurting. Hospitals have also closed down across the state.
Right. I think that's another thing. And obviously Biden will talk about and basically do what he's done already, which is kind of make it seem like COVID's still a concern, but we've kind of moved past it. The truth is, it's been one of the greatest political / media psyops probably that I've seen in recent years to basically push this idea that COVID's over. Everybody could have different opinions on the severity of COVID, and obviously that's become a political issue. But the reality is, it's been rip-roaring through this country. It really hasn't stopped through the winter, continued variants. More and more people are, coming out now with long COVID and applying for long-term disability, which is going to put even more of a strain on our already broken healthcare system. I see it all day online, and I have people DMing me constantly about having long COVID or crazy things happening at hospitals and still having a lot of COVID patients. People who had COVID, maybe 6 months ago, who all of a sudden now are getting blood clots, heart issues, pulmonary issues. And there's really it's kind of just been disappeared. And remember, a big reason I think Trump lost in 2020 was his mishandling of the pandemic, and the resistance and, Biden sycophants were criticizing Trump. But when Biden says it's over, even though it's not really over, we don't even know the true case count in this country because they don't count at-home tests. We don't really know the full rate of hospitalization because they've changed the definition of a COVID patient. And you're not going to hear this on some YouTube channels, but this is the reality. Cases are a lot higher than you know. Hospitalizations are a lot higher than you know. I would argue deaths are probably higher than we know. But it's basically been disappeared on the altar of capitalism and get back to business. And Joe Biden pretty much has continued Donald Trump's policies, if not worse, in my opinion. But you will hear from him tonight, that I don't know if he'll say we've beat COVID, but he'll say that, now it's manageable and we've moved on and blah, blah, blah. By the way, Puck News, which is a great site, it's subscription, but they have a lot of the inside scoop. They reported that during the vote-a-rama for Kevin McCarthy and the 15 votes, that literally all these Congress people that weren't wearing masks on the floor, they were outside wearing masks and coughing up their lungs because a good portion of them had COVID and were going on the House floor voting anyway because they needed their votes. I think he's going to exaggerate a whole lot of things tonight, but namely how strong the economy is. I'll be interested also to see what he says about Russia and Ukraine, China, which we know about the balloon, which I saw a funny tweet that it was actually George Santos's testicle in the sky.
And making our country safer. Didn't mean to. The George Santos testicle just now processed fully.
Yes. I just want to introduce our newest guest who's going to join us during this State of the Union. Joining us now, not on the Senate floor, Senator Bernie Sanders has joined us to give commentary on his good friend Joe Biden. Welcome, Senator.
Jordan, it's good to be with you. Zeynab, nice to see you. I'm going to try to be as respectful as I can regarding my good friend Joe. We certainly have a lot of problems in this country that we have to deal with on a regular basis, and I am certain they are not going to be talked about here tonight.
All right, let's hear President Biden. We'll be cutting in and out.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you, please. Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, good to see you guys up there. Members of Congress, by the way, Chief Justice, I may need a court order. She gets to go to the game tomorrow, next week. I have to stay home. Got to work something out here. Members of the Cabinet, leaders of our military, Chief Justice, Associate Justice, and retired Justice of the Supreme Court, and to you, my fellow Americans. I start tonight by congratulating the 118th Congress and the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
McCarthy's got a big erection right now, for sure.
Forward to working with you. And I want to congratulate the new leader of the House Democrats, the first African-American minority leader in history, Hakeem Jeffries.
Bernie, are you excited about Hakeem Jeffries as a Democratic leader?
Look, unfortunately, we certainly have a lot of significant differences in terms of our philosophy regarding the way that the economy should be run. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Jeffries is a little too cozy with Wall Street and Silicon Valley, whereas I am not. And that kind of is the long and the short of it.
Gotcha.
And congratulations to Chuck Schumer, another, another term as Senate Minority Leader. I think only this time you have a slightly bigger majority, Mr. Leader. You're the majority leader. About that much bigger?
Bernie, he just called Chuck Schumer the minority leader. Isn't he the majority leader?
The last I checked, the Democrats still have control of the U.S. Senate. He is the majority leader. Joe's not off to a very good start here.
Folks, the story of America is a story of progress and resilience, of always moving forward, of never, ever giving up. It's a story unique among all nations. We're the only country that has emerged from every crisis we've ever entered stronger than we got into it. Look, folks, that's what we're doing again. 2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years, because of you all, because of the American people. 2 years ago.
Obviously, the media, Biden's not going to tell you, but a significant portion, nearly half of the jobs created, have been in the leisure and hospitality industry. No disrespect to anybody who works in that industry, really hard work, restaurants, bars, hotels, etc. Not exactly booming union, high wage, great benefit jobs. Zeynab. You're muted.
My computer's muting me. I have to figure out what's happening. I'm sorry. I'm having all kinds of tech issues today. So it's not just those jobs that are being created, but we've also got a problem with it being a majority gig work, especially among millennials. So not only is there no union work under most restaurant jobs like I worked at for 15 years, but the gig economy is really high and the pay in that's pretty low.
Right.
Ability. We're often told that Democrats and Republicans can't work together. But over the past 2 years, we've proved the cynics and naysayers wrong. Yes, we disagreed plenty. And yes, there were times when Democrats went alone. But time and again, Democrats and Republicans came together to defend a stronger and safer Europe. It came together to pass once in a generation infrastructure law, building bridges connecting our nation and our people. We came together to pass the most significant law ever, helping victims exposed to toxic burn pits. And in fact, it was important. And in fact, I signed over 300 bipartisan pieces of legislation since becoming president.
Bernie, I know your friend Joe right now is doing a nice poem on bipartisan legislation. He's very much loves working with Republicans. He spoke about the infrastructure deal. My understanding of the infrastructure deal, Bernie, is it's basically a privatization scheme, selling off a lot of America's public water, sewer, and public utilities to private companies. And not exactly providing long-lasting, permanent jobs. Is the infrastructure deal as great as the president makes it out to be?
No, it is definitely not. And unfortunately, what a lot of Americans tend to forget is that the infrastructure project, which is unfortunately a big corporate giveaway, was supposed to be done in conjunction with passing the Build Back Better deal. And that did not come to pass. Instead, we got this ridiculous corporate giveaway of an infrastructure bill. The president is wrong. He should not be bragging about this giveaway to corporate special interests. We are not building bridges. We are building whatever we're building to nowhere, and nowhere fast.
And Bernie, did you send a letter to your friend Joe telling him this, or you told him in person?
I told him in person, but unfortunately he couldn't remember what I was saying. So I wrote a letter. He may have it in his desk, and we'll see if he actually gets around to reading it at some point. I have to tell you, Jordan, I am very, very frustrated so far.
Gotcha.
What we do. To build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. Because when the middle class does well, the poor have a ladder up, and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well. I know a lot of you always kid me for always quoting my dad, but my dad used to say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. He really would say this. It's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. Well, folks, so let's look at the results. We're not finished yet by any stretch of the imagination, but unemployment rate is at 3.4%, a 50-year low.
What's the pay? What's the median income?
Say that again, Zeynab.
I said, what's the median income, Joe?
Say it ain't so, Joe. And by the way, like I said, millions of people have dropped out of the workforce because of letting it rip and the COVID pandemic. Not to mention, healthcare costs are higher than they have been in 30 years in this country. So,
and the Bureau of Labor and Statistics only counts people that are out of work for 6 months. So anyone out of work for any longer than 6 months aren't even counted in that 3% quote that he's having from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So that's millions of Americans unaccounted for with the current unemployment statistics.
Bernie, you still travel quite a bit, you know, going to red states, try to keep the pulse of the nation. Is there a booming economy out there like your friend Joe is saying?
Well, look, if you live within the confines of the Washington, D.C. area, Southern Maryland, Northern Virginia, yeah, things are going really well. If you go into places like central Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, all throughout the South, throughout the heartland, no, we are not doing very well. We have not seen an increase in the minimum wage. We have not done anything regarding health care. The environment is being destructed every single day. People do not have clean water to drink. A lot of problems, Jordan, a lot of problems. And hopefully the president will get around to talking about it.
There's 10 million. And by the way, every time someone starts a small business is an act of hope. And Madam Vice President, I want to thank you for leading that effort to ensure that small businesses have access to capital and the historic laws we enacted that are going to just come into being.
We don't have enough time for this, but by the way, the PPP program under Biden became a fucking, oh my God, it was a who's who of corporate criminals looting money that was meant for actual small businesses. I actually just reported earlier. I didn't report it. I tweeted it. James Clyburn, who Biden should thank for giving him South Carolina, his daughter and son-in-law got a nice PPP loan that they didn't need. So have billionaires, Shark Tank hosts like Kevin O'Leary. They raided Biden's administration for PPP money. So that's kind of the small business help that's been out there for the masses.
Because if you had a high-priced lawyer, you could get a lot more money. And so, you know, they were able to take advantage.
We need to be worrying about how to help the mom and pop shops around the country, not these special interest groups and the already rich who are taking full advantage of our government that has been bought off by those special interests.
Thank you, Bernie.
Your turn for me?
No, they're not clapping for you.
I know I've been criticized for saying this, but I'm not changing my view. We're going to make sure the supply chain for America begins in America. The supply chain begins in America. We've already created 800,000 new manufacturing jobs without this law, before the law kicks in. With this new law, we're going to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs across the country. And I mean all across the country, throughout not just the coast, but through the middle of the country as well. That's going to come from companies that have announced more than $3 $100 billion in investment in American manufacturing over the next few years. Outside of Columbus, Ohio, Intel is building semiconductor factories on 1,000 acres, literally a field of dreams. It's going to create 10,000 jobs, that one investment, 7,000 construction jobs, 3,000 jobs in those factories once they're finished. They call them factories. Jobs paying an average of $130,000 a year, and many do not require a college degree.
Did he just say they call them factories?
They call them factors.
Oh. What's interesting about this, and file this under problems that Biden helped cause that he's now claiming he's fixing. I give you crime bill, et cetera. But this was something that wasn't talked about a lot during the worst of the COVID pandemic. Why didn't we have any masks in America? Why didn't we have any gowns in America? Why didn't we have eye goggles, et cetera, et cetera? Because people like Joe Biden as a senator pushed and profited off of NAFTA, pushed and tried to profit off of TPP. Senators like him let corporate America and Wall Street write multinational trade deals that sold the manufacturing base to China and Mexico. I don't have a problem with Chinese and Mexican having jobs. They're slave wage jobs that they're doing, so we could have lower cost goods. But I do have a problem if it comes at the expense of American workers. And Biden, as a senator, was one of the people who championed basically totally just demolishing America's manufacturing base. And now he's talking about bringing jobs back. What he's not talking about, those jobs that they're bringing back, I don't remember which factory he mentioned, they're not going to make those companies pay any taxes. They're going to give them all sorts of subsidies to create those jobs, et cetera, et cetera.
Including
Jordan, I'm going to pop up. They played a game in the chat. Wrong answers only. What will Biden talk about tonight? I'll be sharing those while we're listening to him.
Okay.
Clean water, high-speed internet, all across America. Urban, rural, tribal. And folks, we're just getting started. We're just getting started.
I will give him this one because we don't want, we want to be accurate. The infrastructure deal did do some good things, including providing Wi-Fi and stronger internet to reservations, rural parts of America. So there was some good stuff sprinkled in. I think that's what he was just talking about in terms of the infrastructure deal, high band internet, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a good thing. We could give him credit for that. But there's a lot more shitty things as part of that infrastructure deal.
This law will further unite all of America. Projects like Brent Spence Bridge in Kentucky over the Ohio River, built 60 years ago, badly needed repairs, one of the nation's most congested freight routes, carrying $2 billion worth of freight every single day across the Ohio River. And folks, we've been talking about fixing it for decades, but we're really finally going to get it done. I went there last month with Democrats and Republicans and from both states to deliver a commitment of $1.6 billion for this project. And while I was there, I met a young woman named Sarah, who's here tonight. I don't know where Sarah is. Is she up in the box? I don't know. Sarah, how are you? Well, Sarah, for 30 years, I learned, she told me she'd been a proud member of the Iron Workers Local 44, known as the Cowboys in the Sky. The folks who built Cincinnati's skyline. Sarah said she can't wait to be 10 stories above the Ohio River building that new bridge. God bless her.
Bernie, are you starting to regret that you didn't go harder on this bum? I mean, for God's sakes, it is one platitude and hot air balloon after the next.
I just don't like seeing the president hard-working people, especially people of color, as political props. It is a very bad look, and it is very inappropriate. We have the lowest percentage of union workers in this country that we've ever had. It's at 10%. That is way too low, and we must recognize that a labor movement must be robust and much bigger than anything President Biden and certainly President Trump have done in the past several years. And don't even get me started on President Obama. We are not in a good place when it comes to workers. Do not use them as props, Mr. President.
But why are you still calling him my friend Joe if he's selling out the workers, Bernie?
I do what I have to do, Jordan. Fascism, authoritarianism, whatever you want to call it. It's come.
All right. Don't get so angry, Bernie. It's early. Hold on.
It's totally consistent with international trade rules. Buy America has been the law since 1933, but for too long, past administrations, Democrat and Republican, have fought to get around it. Not anymore. Tonight, I'm announcing new standards that require all construction materials used in federal infrastructure projects to be made in America. Made in America. I mean it.
You know what else has been made in America, Zeynab? The COVID relief money that not just Biden, but Trump administration showered to all the states and didn't actually have any, didn't have any actual rules to how you have to spend it. They're making more prisons in America now with COVID money made in America. But he's not going to mention that one tonight. You're muted again.
He's also not going to mention the environmental impacts of everything he just called for without making any massive environmental changes before a huge, apparently, infrastructure push that's not going to happen.
Right. He's also not going to mention leave a super chat so that we could fund more on-the-ground reporting. Bernie, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that it is very important to recognize that when it comes to making things in America, it should be union made in America. Very important.
Well, Senator Sanders, during the Democratic primaries, you really didn't go after him for being a fake union guy. Remember, NAFTA, repealing Glass-Steagall,
Jordan,
TPP.
we've been over this many times before. The goal was to get Trump out of office. I did what I had to do.
Okay, you did what you had to do.
Lay in bed at night like my dad did.
Oh, more about his dad. No more about your dad. Holy shit.
Spouse gets cancer, or your child gets deadly ill, or something happens to you. What are you going to have? You get money to pay for those medical bills? Or you're going to have to sell the house or try to get a second mortgage on it. I get it. With the Inflation Reduction Act that I signed into law, we're taking on powerful interests to bring healthcare costs down so you can sleep better at night with more security. You know, we pay more for prescription drugs than any nation in the world. Let me say it again. We pay more for prescription drugs than any major nation on earth. For example, 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. Many of you in this chamber do, and in the audience. But every day, millions need insulin to control their diabetes so they can literally stay alive. Insulin's been around for over 100 years.
Didn't this guy say he would veto Medicare for all? Didn't he run on a public option?
Yeah. He's also acting like this is going to happen in the future. People's houses will be taken away in the future. People won't have insulin in the future. Hey, Biden, it's happening now.
And by the way, although it is good, Bernie, that insulin was capped at $35 for seniors, it's like the rest of everything. Why just for seniors? Do 64-year-olds not need affordable insulin, Bernie?
Look, unfortunately, we are in a situation where we do not get half measures, we get crumbs. The truth of the matter is we need Medicare for all through a single-payer system, so we eliminate the for-profit middlemen in between us and our doctors. There is absolutely no excuse that insulin costs anything. It should be a part of the single-payer system. All prescription drugs, whether for seniors or for adults, children, those that are sick, those that are in need, many people cannot afford any of it. And if they do afford it, they can't afford to put healthy food on their table. That is a very real crisis here in America, and I doubt that the president is going to mention that. Half measures, small measures, teeny-weensy measures you can't even see, not good enough.
Thank you, Bernie.
Americans who do not or are not on Medicare including 200,000 young people with type 1 diabetes and need this insulin to stay alive. Let's finish the job this time. Let's cap the cost of insulin for everybody at $35.
This time is in his next election cycle.
Right, but why I think Brianna Joy Gray made this point. Why do they have selective concern for certain things? Why is it only insulin we should cap at $35? What about antidepressants? What about medication for Parkinson's? What about medication for epilepsy? I mean, we could go down the list. Not that insulin, we don't need cheaper insulin, but it's like they carve out specific things. Brianna Joy Gray made the point during COVID. Why free care for COVID, which, by the way, he didn't follow through on. He did run on, if you get COVID, your care in the hospital will be free. Totally abandoned that. But why not the same thing for cancer? Why not the same thing for all things like Europe and other civilized countries far less wealthy than us? So it's all cherry picked. Do I think it's a good thing that insulin will be made cheaper for seniors? Yes. But the rest of what he's talking about, that they're going to lower prescription drug prices as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. I interviewed Michael Lighty. He's one of the smartest people on healthcare. Bernie, he's part of the Sanders Institute.
I am a big fan of Michael Lighty. He is a huge champion of Medicare for all. A great guy.
He called bunk.
Biden just said he cut that doing this insulin for 65-year-olds, cut the deficit, cut the federal deficit this month. That's his big accomplishment.
Oh boy, we need Steve Grumbine to jump on.
I
If you're watching, Steve,
I did not serve all of these years in the United States Congress and the U.S. Senate to have my good friend Joe turn into a modern Ronald Reagan. This is not acceptable.
But threatening to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. As my coach, that's okay. That's fair. As my football coach used to say, lots of luck in your senior year. Make no mistake, if you try anything to raise the cost of prescription drugs, I will veto it. Look, I'm pleased to say that more Americans have health insurance now than ever in history. A record 16 million people are enrolled in the Affordable Care Act. And thanks to the law I signed last year, saving millions are saving $800 a year on their premiums.
Tariq, thanks for the $10. Just want to say thank you, Joe, for letting that eviction moratorium and child tax credit expire. My life has never been better without a roof over my head, in food to feed my children. Hey, Tariq, thanks for the $10. Remember, Zeynab, you weren't with us. Status Coup through on-the-ground reporting. I was in Louisville and elsewhere. We broke the story during the pandemic, during the supposed eviction moratorium, that tens of thousands of people were still being evicted despite Biden's moratorium because there were more fucking loopholes than a roller coaster.
That's including, right. States could do whatever the hell they wanted.
Right. So the eviction moratorium could only prevent eviction for the pandemic. Landlords could evict you for the lease being up or not paying rent or nuisance type things. So there were a lot of people that fell through the cracks of Biden's, quote, eviction moratorium. And there's still, I mean, he's not going to mention, we have a record number of homeless people in this country, Senator Sanders.
We certainly do, Jordan. And unfortunately, one of the reasons that a lot of people are homeless is because they can't afford to live. We need a living wage. We need universal health care. Unfortunately, the president just doesn't seem to get it.
Hopefully a couple more letters to him written by you might convince him of these things.
No, it's probably going to take a lot more than a few letters, Jordan. It might take thousands and thousands of letters from you good people out there. You can't just expect me to do everything. I need the help from the people.
Thank you, Sanders. Thank you, Senator.
Historic conservation efforts to be responsible stewards of our land. Let's face reality. The climate crisis doesn't care if you're in a red or blue state. It's an existential threat. We have an obligation, not to ourselves, but to our children and grandchildren, to confront it. I'm proud of how how America at last is stepping up to the challenge. We're still going to need oil and gas for a while. But guess what? No, we do. But there's so much more to do. We got to finish the job.
Ooh, they threw some heat.
We pay for these investments in our future by finally making the wealthiest and biggest corporations begin to pay their
Oh
fair
my
share.
God.
Just begin.
One wrong answer only. He said it. He said he was
Look,
going to
I'm a
make corporations
capitalist.
pay that.
I'm a capitalist, but pay your fair share. I think a lot of you at home agree with me and many people that you know. The tax system is not fair.
Can I just point out that the Sunrise Movement is outstanding right now. Quoting Biden, the climate crisis doesn't care if you're in a red or blue state. It is an existential threat from POTUS. So the Sunrise Movement, who Biden sold out, is quoting Biden. So there's your progressive movement.
It's sad.
Your thoughts, since you were involved with some of those people, Zeynab?
They they were supposed to hold both parties accountable, be non-biased, any representative, but nope, you get the Democrats in, you get a Democratic president, and they think just, being nice and asking politely will get something done, and it's not, and it hasn't, and it's not going to.
And I'm just going to nicely and politely ask the audience if you support this in-depth reaction and the appearance by Senator Sanders. Feel free to leave us a super chat or a donation at statuscoup.com/donate. That is part of our fundraising campaign right now. We have raised over $8,000. Our goal is $20,000. Hopefully by the end of this month, we have Louis DeAngelis going to the border soon. So that's going to be a great on-the-ground reporting trip and an expensive reporting trip. We also might be going back to Atlanta to cover the updates and developments with Cop City. All of this costs money. So if you could support us, statuscoup.com/donate, statuscoup.com/join to become a Status Coup member. Back to Biden.
Enthusiastic about that, but think about it. Think about it. Have you noticed Big Oil just reported its profits, record profits? Last year they made $200 billion in the midst of a global energy crisis. I think it's outrageous. Why? They invested too little of that profit to increase domestic production. And when I talk to a couple of them, they say, we're afraid you're going to shut down all the oil wells and all the oil refineries anyway, so why should we invest in them? I said, we're going to need oil for at least another decade. And that's going to exceed and beyond that. We're going to need it. Production. If they
Senator Sanders, he just said climate change is an existential threat, but just said we're going to need oil for the next decade. Which one is it?
We need a Green New Deal. That goes without saying. What we also need is to stop issuing more drilling permits for oil than President Trump. That was a big problem, and apparently he hasn't gotten the message. There are so many alternative energy solutions that are out there that do not involve hydraulic fracturing or fracking, do not involve drilling on native land to take advantage of those that do not have a voice. What we must do is move to a clean energy grid, and that includes all different alternative energy options that do not have a carbon footprint. And that includes exploration with nuclear, that includes solar, wind, geothermal, everything that does not involve destroying this planet any further. We cannot and must not tolerate this idea that we must rely solely on oil and gas for the next decade, because a decade from now, the next person in charge who is controlled by corporate interests will say it'll be another decade before we change.
Senator Sanders, I cannot stress this enough. The United Nations has said we don't have more, we have less than a decade until irreversible damage is done to this planet. And the president, your friend, just said we need oil for another 10 years. what planet is your friend Joe on when he says we need oil for another 10 years, where the UN says we have less than 10 years until irreversible damage?
As I said from the very beginning, my good friend Joe is not doing a very good job tonight. And now I am really, really unhappy with what he's been saying. The climate crisis is the existential threat of our lifetime. And you don't follow that statement up by suggesting that we're going to do the exact thing that has been destroying the environment to begin with.
Dana, your thoughts?
Well, I was listening in the background to what he was saying, and he was just saying to call his office if anyone doubts that he's going to tax corporations, and that big oil will come here and do manufacturing and pay people good jobs. A massive boo from the entire Congress. They are booing him on every other word he's saying. So we might want to listen just a little bit so we can hear it, but it's not going well for him right now. It's constant boos. He's getting standing ovations from the Republicans. I am seeing some really interesting things in the dialogue here right now.
And thank you, Fly Champa Fly, $5. This is what I mean when I say Joe quotes Bernie, because he knows those are popular with people, but doesn't follow through. So a little love for you, Bernie, from Fly Champa Fly. You there, Bernie?
I am just mesmerized by how out of touch, out of sight, out of mind this speech has been so far. I am just trying to take it all in, because if I don't, I'm going to let it all out.
Thank you, Bernie.
All right. They're not to be stopped. All right. We got unanimity. Social Security, Medicare are a lifeline for millions of seniors. Americans have to pay into them from the very first paycheck they started. So tonight, let's all agree, and we apparently are, let's stand up for seniors.
Just a little historical record here. When President Biden was Vice President Biden, he was doing Obama's dirty work on Capitol Hill as part of the grand bargain with Speaker Boehner at the time. And Biden and Obama put Social Security on the table, if you recall that, Senator Sanders.
My good friend Joe, unfortunately, has put a lot of bad policy on the table, including cutting Social Security and Medicare. Also, was a big supporter of the crime bill in '94. I did sign that bill, but only the Defense of Women's Act was included. I am the Amendment King. That was the reason it was. That's the reason I voted for it. He has also been a huge supporter of our terrible trade deals that have also exacerbated the climate crisis, NAFTA, normal trade relations with China. And he absolutely would have pushed through the TPP if he had the opportunity. Thankfully, that has not come.
He was one of the main people pushing for it. That's right.
Well, I did not push for it, and it is the one thing I will give President Trump credit for. He did axe the TPP, but we must be vigilant and recognize that there are a lot of other bad trade deals that will destroy the economy for working people as well as the environment as a whole if we allow them to come to pass.
Thank you, Senator Sanders.
The way we talked about by making sure that the wealthy and big corporations pay their fair share.
All right, I'm skipping that part because it's the same bullshit we've heard from Democrats about the wealthy paying their fair share, but they never actually followed through on making the wealthy pay their fair share. Thank you, Humorous, $200. Holy cow. Thank you so much, Humorous. You are always so kind and supportive of Status Coup and our reporting. Really, really helpful, that amount. Stop voting for all these people. Some of them have been up there for 7 decades. Stop voting for a fake party such as the Republicans or Democrats. Just stop, everyone. Are we really going to allow the United Corporations of America pick and choose our life as well as our children? I think that's really well spoken, Humorous. And yeah, I would add that what you're seeing right now is just a lot of theater. As I've showed you over and over and over again, this is the U.S. economy right here. So nothing Biden will say can change. This is your U.S. economy over the last 40 years. vicious as that U.S. economy has gone, share of wealth, and unionization. You see the correlation? As unionization has plummeted, wealth has not even trickled up, hoarded up to the very plutocrats in the room right now, clapping for President Biden. And there is the U.S. compared to Europe and Western Europe as far as how rapid income inequality is. So there's income inequality problems in other countries, nothing like the United Corporations of America.
Reduce exorbitant bank overdrafts by saving consumers more than $1 billion a year. We're cutting credit card late fees by 75% from $30 to $8. Look, junk fees may not matter to the very wealthy, but they matter to most other folks in homes like the one I grew up in, like many of you did. They add up to hundreds of dollars a month. They make it harder for you to pay your bills or afford that family trip. I know how unfair it feels when a company overcharges you and gets away with it. Not anymore.
Biden probably thinks that $12 goes a long way these days. We're going to cut it back from, $22. We're going to cut it back from $30 to $8 like it's a great feat. Save so much money. You can pay your rent with that. You can take care of your medical bills. Not too many credit card companies have increased their interest rates, but that's a whole other discussion.
And by the way, I'm like 10 minutes late with this because he made this comment 10 minutes ago. But when he was talking about the fossil fuckers and big corporate profits from the fossil fuel companies, he left out that was due to corporate price gouging by those fossil fuel companies. And Biden and the federal government give the fossil fuckers $15 billion with a B, $15 billion in free subsidies every year. He could have, instead of sending a letter to the fossil fuel executives, kindly asking them to lower the price of gas, he could have said, if you don't lower the price of gas by end of week, we're pulling that $15 billion annually. You know who did that in 1962 when it came to the steel companies? Price gouging and price fixing? John F. Kennedy, before the CIA got to him. And U.S. Steel and the steel companies folded like a cheap tent. And they lowered prices because John F. Kennedy said, I'm pulling your submarine contracts if you don't, and I'm giving it to steel companies that aren't raising prices. But Joe Biden didn't do that. Why? Because it's not just about the oil companies donating directly to the Democratic Party. They donate more to the Republican Party. Wall Street is the largest investor in fossil fuels, and Wall Street has purchased the Democratic Party, and Joe Biden let them gouge people. If you were in California, $7, $8 a gallon. If you were in Hawaii, God knows how much they were paying in Hawaii. If you were in the East Coast, over $5 a gallon. He let them do that when there were things he could have done to force them to lower the price of gas. Nothing to say, Senator Sanders?
Unfortunately, Jordan, I am getting more and more frustrated by the minute, but I will say that price gouging is something that was not properly dealt with in either of the last two administrations. Had I been president, it certainly would have been dealt with. The power of the executive means that there are things that you can do to override Congress if there is too much gridlock and the people are desperate. We should never have been faced with the crisis at the gas pump, much less at the grocery store, and many, many people are still suffering to this very day.
Thank you. And thank you to Michael Reich, $20 super chat. Jordan challenges me. He stands by his guns. He gets money. Support your conscience. Why, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we should challenge each other. Too often in the progressive movement, it's become a bit of a snowflake movement where if you are not fed, not you, Michael, but people in general, if you're not fed what you already believe from YouTube hosts 100% of the time, it's this unsubscribe mentality. Or if your hero YouTube host is dare criticized, oh my God, people get triggered. I'm seeing it all day on my Twitter today. If you dare criticize people's preferred YouTube host. But I hope that Status Coup does challenge people's beliefs in a good way. You don't have to agree with me or anybody here 24/7, but I really do hope that you learned something from us, particularly our on-the-ground reporting. And I really appreciate the super chat. It's very, very helpful, as we do need to grow our funds. And not that we don't want super chats, but if you're going to donate, also consider doing it through our website, because YouTube, in addition to screwing us and suppressing us, takes 30% of super chats. Whereas if you donate statuscoup.com/donate through our website, it's only like a 2% processing fee. So just keep that in mind when you're donating. We'll take it either way. If super chats is easier for you, that's fine. But you can donate to our website, statuscoup.com/donate. The link is in the description of this video.
By providing access to preschool for 3 and 4 years old. Studies show that children who go to preschool are nearly 50% more likely to finish high school and go on to earn a 2 or 4 year degree, no matter their background they came from. Let's give public school teachers a raise.
Is that Bono in the middle?
We're making progress.
That is indeed Bono.
That's
So,
what I thought.
They're bringing out the heavy guns.
Middle-class families. Let's finish the job and connect students to career opportunities starting in high school. Provide access to 2 years of community college. The best career training in America, in addition to being a pathway to a 4-year degree.
Bernie, I mean, you wanted full public college, public tuition.
Tuition-free public college and trade schools in America. We do not need access to affordable college. We are so far behind the rest of the world when it comes to our workforce. We must make it easier and less expensive than harder and more expensive.
I mean, Bernie, the truth is, we all have access to the buffet at 5 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Not everybody could afford the buffet.
That's right.
Well, I can show you a good buffet that doesn't cost so much, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
Remember,
On student loans right now, Biden's talking about taking us further back than we were 30 years ago, when state and community colleges were funded by the government at 85% subsidized. They used to be subsidized. They're only subsidized at 12% now. He's not taking us forward. He's not even taking us back to where we were 30 years ago.
It is very unfortunate. And as I've stated many a times before, education, much like healthcare, is a right. And if we had tuition-free public college and tuition-free trade schools, we could then cancel student debt forever.
So Congress needs to fund these efforts and keep America safe. And as we emerge from this crisis stronger, we're also got to double down on prosecuting criminals who stole relief money meant to keep workers and small businesses afloat.
Are they going to start with the millionaires and billionaires?
He's talking about what I talked about, the PPP program, where Democratic and Republican Party donors raided the cookie jar. So he's talking about prosecuting them. I don't know who's in charge of that. The Attorney General. We're still waiting for the Attorney General to prosecute the criminals from 2008. That's not just Biden's fault. That's Obama's fault too. But the Democratic Party didn't prosecute the people who tanked the global fucking economy through widespread fraud. So what makes you think they're going to prosecute anyone who raided the cookie jar for PPP money that they shouldn't have got? Give me a break.
Statute of limitations on these crimes and crack down on identity fraud by criminal syndicates stealing billions of dollars from the American people. And the data shows that for every dollar we put into fighting fraud, the taxpayers get back at least 10 times as much. It matters. It matters. Look, COVID left its scars, like the spike in violent crime in 2020, the first year of the pandemic. We have an obligation to make sure all people are safe.
Sprinkling that pro-cop language.
As all of us know. But too often that trust is violated. Joining us tonight are the parents of Tyree Nichols.
Oh, God.
Welcome. had to bury Tyree last week. As many of you personally know, there's no words to describe the heartache or grief of losing a child. But imagine if you lost that child at the hands of the law. Imagine having to worry whether your son or daughter came home from walking down the street, playing in the park, or just driving a car.
Imagine if you gave those same criminals $32 billion more to brutalize and kill people like Tyree Nichols. Just imagine.
We have to end qualified immunity. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, imagine getting that gutted out of the bill and threatening to veto if that was included. Just imagine that one too.
Don't reach for your license. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Imagine having to worry like that every single time your kid got in a car. Here's what Tyree's mother shared with me when I spoke to her.
I don't want to hear him use Tyree Nichols' family as a prop. Unfortunately, there will be many more Tyree Nichols. We now, Breonna Taylor's, et cetera, et cetera. This isn't just the Democratic Party. It's the Republican Party. It's also all over the country on the local level. Our government, federal, state, and local, is basically bought off by police unions. There is a fetishizing in this country of the police. I don't think every single policeman is a bastard, but obviously this system cannot be reformed. I'm sure Kim Brown, who hosts for us on Wednesday, will have a lot to say about this tomorrow. But we're just going to see this over and over and over again because it's the same formula as mass shootings. They cover it for a few days. If the protests get out of hand, if there's fire or explosions, they'll cover it for longer because that's good TV. And then they'll move on until the next black person is killed. And by the way they covered this, and that this was the exception, they had all these police people and law enforcement on CNN and MSNBC saying this is the exception. This is bad police work. No, that video of them beating the hell out of Tyree Nichols, that happens a lot in this country. Most of the time, it's not caught on video.
Well, why they did that, Jordan? Because it was 5 black cops. They refused to arrest the white cops initially. So yeah, they scapegoated. Well, not scapegoated because those black cops did it. What they did was use this to say black cops also beat people up. Well, hell, we know that shit. We know that. It's systemic racism. It's systemic brutality. It's institutionalized and privatized brutality. But it makes me sick to see, his family will do anything to bring justice, and to just see this, knowing the thousands of families that are impacted every year by police brutality and death, not to mention the millions of Americans that are sitting in the most heavily populated prison system. Many of them awaiting trial, many of them being unable to afford bail when our vice president is one of the queens of the bail bond system. And Crime Bill Joe wrote it into the crime bill in 30 years ago. So we're seeing the impacts of his legislation right now. And he brings a family in when they are mourning to spout a bunch of bullshit is just infuriating.
And I just want to make the point. It is so Democratic Party having Bono like two seats over from Tyree Nichols' family. I mean, it's just,
I'd just like to say that I happen to be a big fan of Bono. I think that the Joshua Tree was a great album way back in the day, but this is not the time nor the place to be doing this type of a stunt, Bono. This is a much more serious circumstance.
I took you more of a, Rolling Stone, Jackson, 5 kind of guy.
Well, look, I've been around for 8 decades, and for that period of time, I've heard a lot of great music over the years.
Okay.
They're a good band. You got to give them credit.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk about Senator Sanders' karaoke show. Maybe we'll talk after. Hold on.
Together to finish the job on police reform. Do something. Do something. That was the plea of parents who lost their children in Uvalde. I met with every one of them. Do something about gun violence. Thank God. Thank God we did.
And qualified immunity, Mr. President.
They're moving on to mass shootings, but let's be clear. The only thing that might make a dent in the brutality we're seeing if police officers, like every other profession, including doctors, have to carry personal liability insurance and can be sued civilly. It doesn't mean that's going to just totally zap the racism and power complex out of these police officers. It doesn't mean we won't see black people profiled, brutalized, etc. But you might have people hesitate a little bit more if they know that they will be bankrupted if they, senselessly murder black people. Now he's moving on to Uvalde. On this one, I do think it's more of a Republican problem. I think the Democrats, they're not perfect, but they did do an assault weapons ban back in the day, etc. But Biden can do things on guns through executive action. He's choosing not to because Democrats often don't want to take the most aggressive action on guns because they fear that they will bring out the Republican base and it will be an electoral loser. So there are more things that Democrats and Biden can do on executive action that he has chosen not to. What were we saying, Bernie?
Let's also remember that one of the reasons that doesn't get talked about enough, there is so much economic anxiety in this country that it forces people to do dangerous and violent things to other people. If we were living in a more civil and economically balanced society, there would be a lot less individuals looking to pick up guns and going out and hurting people. That's all I have to say.
Why is Bono next to everybody he's shouting out?
Simple.
It's insane.
Let's finish the job and ban these assault weapons. And let's also come together on immigration. Make it a bipartisan issue once again. We now have a record number of personnel working to secure the border, arresting 8,000 human smugglers, seizing over 23,000 pounds of fentanyl in just the last several months. We've launched a new border plan last month. Unlawful migration from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela has come down 97% as a consequence of that. But American border
bragging about Title 42.
Congress acts.
Say that again.
I said bragging about Title 42. Bragging about it. Yeah, we're denying refugees entry from countries that we've ravaged and we put sanctions on and we're sending troops into.
And by the way, he's not going to mention kudos for ending the Afghanistan war, but he's literally starving the people of Afghanistan through withholding their money. The Intercept has done great reporting on that.
The right and the Congress must restore the right that was taken away in Roe v. Wade and protect Roe v. Wade.
I think some Republicans just got smart with him and talked over him, and he got pissed off for a second there.
To protect access to reproductive health care and safeguard patient safety. But already more than a dozen states are enforcing extreme abortion bans. Make no mistake about it. If Congress passes a national ban, I will veto it. But let's also pass the Bipartisan Equality Act to ensure LGBTQ Americans, especially transgender young people, can live with safety and dignity. Our strength is not just the example of our power, but the power of our example. Let's remember the world's watching.
Senator Sanders, didn't the Democratic Party for like 20 years have the ability to codify Roe v. Wade into law and didn't do it because they wanted to continue using it as an electoral issue?
If you want me to be completely honest, Jordan, then I will be completely honest. There is no question that we could have codified Roe v. Wade many, many years ago. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party has discovered that you can raise a lot of money by scaring the shit out of people. And that's exactly what they did. They made them believe that a woman's right to choose could be taken away, and they put all their eggs in one basket with Hillary Clinton in 2016. We all know how that went down. It was a huge, colossal mistake. But I have to tell you, I don't trust the process like I used to when it comes to the Supreme Court. I think it's been completely compromised, and I think the way that the votes go are completely corporate influenced. The interests of making sure that a woman has the right to control her own body does not serve their interests, and that is why women are losing their right to choose. But the
Bernie,
no, go ahead, Joe.
I got to tell you, Bernie, where was this on the debate stage? That would have been a great zinger if you said the Democratic Party does a great job of scaring the living shit out of people. Where was this Bernie?
I don't know how to answer that, Jordan. I think you got me on that one. But I do want to say, it is very important to remember that when you look at what has happened over the last year plus, there have been many states since Roe v. Wade was taken away. It has been codified in multiple red states like Kentucky, Montana, and Kansas. The American people may decide that they are going to vote Republican or Democrat, but what they do always tend to make the right decision on is when it comes to the concrete issues of our time. I do believe that the majority, overwhelming majority of the American people are sensible and understand when it comes to singular issues, they do tend to vote the right way.
With President Xi, that we seek competition, not conflict. But I will make no apologies that we're investing to make America stronger. Investing in American innovation and industries that will define the future that China intends to be dominating. Investing in our alliances and working with our allies to protect advanced technologies so they will not be used against us. Modernizing our military to safeguard stability and deter aggression. Today, we're in the strongest position in decades to compete with China or anyone else in the world. Anyone else in the world. And I'm committed. I'm committed to work with China where we can advance American interests and benefit the world. But make no mistake about it. As we made clear last week, if China threatens our sovereignty, we will act to protect our country, and we did.
Is he talking about the balloon? Is he good? Oh, he's talking about the balloon. Okay. You're muted, Jordan.
To be clear, remember, we've heard all this nonsense about, the Republicans are now anti-war. You know, we've heard, quote, leftists talking about Republicans are anti-war. Oh, my God, the collective fucking erection of the Republican Party right now to go to war with China is 10 inches long, that erection. And we should say a lot of Democratic Party, too.
Plenty of them. And Biden's stoking those flames right now. That's exactly what he's stoking with talking about China's weather balloon that we just shot down this week.
But I just want to make clear, they're all not really anti-war. It's all bullshit. The quote Marjorie Taylor Greene and these grifters, who, by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene invested $15,000 in Lockheed Martin and Chevron. $15,000 apiece she invested in Lockheed Martin and Chevron 2 days before Russia invaded Ukraine. Tell me how anti-war she is as she's cashing in on the Russia-Ukraine war.
Stood here. We made real progress together. We passed a law making it easy for doctors to prescribe effective treatments for opioid addiction. We passed the gun safety law, making historic investments in mental health. We launched the ARPA-H drive for breakthrough in the fights against cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes, and so much more. We passed the Heath Robinson PACT Act, named after the late Iraq War veteran whose story about exposure to toxic burn kits I shared here last year. I understand something about those burn pits, but there's so much more to do. We can do it together. Joining us tonight is a father named Doug from Newton, New Hampshire. He wrote Jill my wife a letter, and me as well, about his courageous daughter, Courtney. A contagious laugh, his sister's best friend, her sister's best friend. He shared a story all too familiar to millions of Americans and many of you in the audience. Courtney discovered pills in high school. It spiraled into addiction and eventually death from a fentanyl overdose. She was just 20 years old. Describing the last 8 years without her, Doug said, "There's no worse pain." Yet their family has turned pain to purpose, working to end the stigma and change laws. He told us he wants to start a journey toward American recovery. Doug, we're with you. Fentanyl is killing more than 70,000 Americans a year. Big, you got it. So let's launch a major surge to stop fentanyl production and the sale and trafficking with more drug detection machines, inspection cars.
Zeynab, very little discussion on why there's an opioid crisis in this country. Could it have anything to do with economic and societal rot and despair brought on by neoliberalism over the last 40 years?
It has to do, honestly, this opioid crisis, because I live in Kentucky, Paula Jean lived in West Virginia, the people that live in Ohio. Yes, it comes from that, but it also comes from pharmaceutical pill mills that pumped this into our communities criminally with, medical reps pushing it and pushing quotas and giving the healthcare providers, well, I wouldn't even call them healthcare providers, pill pushers at that point, discounts for these medications. So they were hooking Americans on opioid, people in Appalachia, rural communities on opioids. And now we are literally seeing the fallout of that. He acted like she was in high school, got her hands on some pills. Biden, this ain't how it happens. People get in an accident, they have an injury, they go to the hospital, they're given pills by their doctor, and that's how most of these addictions happen. So instead of treating addiction, now he's talking about criminalizing it. And he's talking about criminalizing migrants. And that's going to be his focus instead of healing and instead of holding these pharmaceuticals companies accountable.
Which, by the way, we're right now planning on sending Louis DeAngelis to the border to cover what's going on down there, not from the right-wing perspective or not from the MSNBC perspective, but to actually interview the people trying to come into this country and actually tell you the truth and cover it from the perspective of why are all of these immigrants fleeing these countries? Could it have anything to do with how America has ravaged these countries through the drug war and military-industrial complex and coup attempts, et cetera, et cetera? So we're trying to send Louis there, but it's very expensive. So that's another reason, if you can, donate, statuscoup.com/donate.
Jill and I reignited the cancer moonshot that I was able to start with President Obama asked me to lead our administration on this issue. Our goal is to cut the cancer death rates at least by 50% in the next 25 years. Turn more cancers from death sentences to treatable diseases. Provide more support for patients and their families. It's personal to so many of us in this audience. Joining us,
Senator Sanders, you think we might have some improvement in terms of cancer if we had Medicare for all, which would allow pre-screening and regular medical checkups in America for cancer, among other things?
As it has been documented throughout the rest of the world, it is not just the fact that we do not have health care in this country. We also have a terrible health system. People's diets are not good. If you look around the rest of the world, who do have universal health care, they also live much healthier lives. Here in America, we subsidize the fast food, agricultural industry, just as we subsidize private insurance and big pharma. It is all interconnected. We are not dealing with the infrastructural issues here in America. You cannot put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. That is what they are trying to do. We must change the philosophy in terms of how we look at doing business in America.
Glimmer of joy was the half smile of their baby girl. It meant everything to them. They never gave up hope. Little Ava never gave up hope. She turns 4 next month. They just found out Ava's beating the odds, is on her way to being cured of cancer. And she's watching from the White House tonight if she's not asleep already. For the lives we can save.
That's obviously a nice story. Can I just say, did they think it was a good idea to put Bono in every single shot? Literally, Bono is in every single shot of the shout outs and the people that they're exploiting for platitudes. I don't particularly think that's a good look. I don't know about you guys.
I don't know. I just know that it's all about theatrics. And you know what? If they make themselves look like asses by putting Bono in every single shot and look like total grifters, the more they expose themselves, the better. Because I think it looks like a joke, and people are watching are going to be like, "You're putting a rock star in every photo," just like you said. But that's not how they see it. They're like, "We're appealing to the working class. Let's get Bono up in here."
Bernie, I know you're a Bono guy, Bernie.
No, I happen to like you too, but one thing I can say is that, have you seen the prices for tickets through Ticketmaster these days, especially if you want to go see a U2 show? It is way too expensive. If I was there right now, which I am, but I'm on the other side of the room, I would be talking to Bono and letting him know that it is totally unacceptable that the average working person cannot afford to see U2 in concert anymore. That's what I'm saying.
Bernie, maybe you could talk to your girl Cardi B about that too. She's very popular. Maybe she could do something about these exorbitant ticket prices.
Cardi B is a friend. She does a really great job. I can't really say that her music is my type, but I know that she inspires a lot of young people out there, and that's really great. But as far as I'm concerned with Bono, no, he does not represent the Democratic Party. He represents cultural elites. That is not what we need on the screen right now. He is, unfortunately, there he goes again.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to show.
This speech is about Bono and not about the president.
They're giving a big shout out to Paul Pelosi.
But such a heinous act should have never happened. We must all speak out. There's no place for political violence in America. We have to protect the right to vote, not suppress the fundamental right. Honor the results of our elections, not subvert the will of the people. We have to uphold the rule of law and restore trust in our institutions of democracy.
I don't have anything bad to say. I mean, I don't like Pelosi, but obviously I'm not supportive of her husband being attacked. What I will say, I'm probably not going to hear anything from Biden tonight on banning insider trading among politicians, which Nancy and Paul Pelosi have profited to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, tens of millions of dollars. We're not going to hear a lot about that, Bernie, right?
I just want to go on record and say I have never, ever traded on inside information. In fact, I've never traded anything other than maybe some baseball cards. That's about it. I do not trade on inside information. It should be illegal. And the fact of the matter is, Speaker Pelosi is using this Trump situation as another cover for the fact that when she was the speaker, she had the opportunity to bring the to ban stock trades act to the floor for a vote. She chose not to. And now my colleague, Senator Hawley, who is a complete fraud, with all due respect, does not actually care about working people, but he has brought the Pelosi Act up for a vote. I will only vote for that act if the blind trusts are removed from protection. That is the only way that I would support that. But the truth of the matter is, insider trading is illegal. It is illegal for all Americans. That should include the United States Congress.
And we should add, it's not only the insider trading, because they're profiting so much off of these companies and the inside information they have, it affects their policy. For example, Pelosi still has not congratulated the Amazon workers who were victorious in unionizing at JFK 8. That's the Speaker of the House of the Democratic Party did not say a word, a positive word about one of the most historic union victories in American history. Could it have anything to do with she's invested millions of dollars in Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and all these big tech, Senator Sanders?
Of course. But, you know, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Senator Sanders. I stepped on you there.
Unfortunately, this has been nothing short of a dog and pony show for the past hour and a half. Like you, Jordan, I only get to stay up so late at night, and I'm kind of getting to the point now where I'm going to ask the president to wrap it up.
I agree. I got a newborn, Bernie. I haven't slept more than 3 hours in 3 months.
I'm not new to this place. I stand here tonight having served as long as about any one of you have ever served here. But I've never been more optimistic about our future, about the future of America. We just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. God bless you.
All right. That's the end of that. Sorry to the audience if we didn't play enough for you. I hope we played enough of it for you.
They got the gist of it.
They got the gist. Thank you, Senator Sanders. You could reintroduce yourself as Peter Hager. I got to tell you something. In all seriousness, Peter Hager is one of the best damn impersonators out there of Bernie Sanders, and that takes a lot to do that under a hot mask for an hour. So leave a super chat.
I was about to say the mask.
Fine, but one more person has something to say. One more person has something to say. That was the absolute worst, terrible speech I've ever heard in my life. It is really terrible. He has Sleepy Joe, and you could tell he was getting sleepy. I have tons of energy. Don't ask me how I am so energetic at this time of night. But his speech was the worst speech I've ever heard. He's a terrible president. We are going to make America great again in 24. So you'll see me on the campaign trail. I'll be giving a great, big, beautiful speech at one of my many, friendly people, white, rallies. They're just rallies. They're great people. They all come together for me because it's all about me. And we are going to solve the crises of this country by lowering taxes, creating austerity, making people suffer even more. There is no way out of this hellhole, ladies and gentlemen. So you might as well get on the Trump train. You might have a chance. Great to see you guys.
And President Trump, real quick, if you are indicted, it would be the Biden administration's Department of Justice indicting you. So if you are indicted, what do you plan on doing? Do you plan on going through the legal process to fight that indictment, or attempting another, overtaking of the country?
I've got 3 words for you, Jordan. 3 words, and they solve every problem. Hunter Biden's laptop. I've got it, and it's totally going to be used as a bargaining chip if I have to. There is no taking down the Donald. There never will be. I'm here forever. Believe me.
I mean, good God.
I agree with Trump this time. That was a terrible, terrible speech that was full of lies. One of the worst speeches
I got to be honest. I didn't think he was going to get through it at the beginning. It seemed like he was. It's funny. Everyone jokes about it, but it's like they hit him.
Sorry, go ahead.
Whatever they hit him up with, again, I don't want to pontificate and assume that they're shooting him up with some type of narcotic to get him to really get going, but it's almost like they know how to time it just right, that he needs to have like a certain amount of juice in him in order to get him through a speech. He's at the beginning. He's like, hey, did you see Hakeem Jeffries, the first black guy to be the, it's like, God damn you. Be a freaking president.
With the full caveat, and keep those super chats coming, we'll read them as we go, with the full caveat that maybe we missed some parts because we were obviously reacting quite a bit.
Let us know in the chat if there was something big that we did miss that you guys think that we should have mentioned. Would love to hear it.
I will say, obviously, MSNBC is drooling, and they'll be very happy. I'm sure CNN will say it did fine. Fox will say it was, apocalyptic. But in reality, I think I think Thomas says, still think that was an android at the podium tonight. In reality, I think this goes back to what we talked about before the speech, and that is the polls. Americans not feeling the impact of the Biden agenda. Let me show that again. Hold on. Americans not feeling the impact of the Biden agenda. This is from ABC Washington Post. Democrats, 77% say he hasn't accomplished very much. Only 22% say he's accomplished a lot. U.S. adults, 62% say he hasn't really accomplished a ton. Oh, excuse me, I read that wrong. 22% of Democrats say he's accomplished a great deal, good amount. 77% say, I think I'm reading this wrong. Bottom line, the poll finds 62% of Americans think Biden has accomplished not very much or little or nothing during his presidency. And why I think this speech overall, for the people who were paying attention, because we know most Americans were not watching, the biggest voting group is non-voters, and they probably were not watching this. But why I think this speech was probably very tone deaf was it was all how great everything is when most people don't feel that way because it's not really great. And I didn't hear much from him actually leveling with people. I know prices are still too high. I know we haven't raised the minimum wage despite running on that. I know these are the realities despite what the numbers are saying. I know you're not feeling it. And here is what I'm going to do. I didn't hear any of that. So you could raise pom-poms and create an alternative reality of how great things are. But people are smart and people are wising up to the neoliberal hellscape. And they don't feel that.
This was the definition of incrementalism. He didn't mention the war and the massive military and Pentagon budget, not once. He bragged about giving more money to cops. He praised cops for at least, I don't know, a minute and a half before he addressed the brutality and acted like it was almost a singular event, right? He didn't mention housing, barely mentioned education. When he mentioned healthcare, he was like, we're going to lower prescription costs. Didn't talk about really going after the drug companies. He didn't address anything. He talked about infrastructure, but it was in such a wishy-washy way that I don't know what the hell he's talking about. It wasn't connected to any policy that I know of. So the things he was celebrating was the definition of incrementalism. I mean, we lowered credit card fees from $30 to $8. This was the State of the Union address. That's the one thing that's going to stick out to me.
Credit card Joe?
Credit card Joe, and our interest rates have gone up on credit cards for most consumers to around 12 to 14% right now, even when you have stellar credit. So yeah, sure. You know, that, you get to save that $22 a month. Only if you're late, though. You get to save. They still get to charge you $8 for being late.
Hey, that amazing mansion that he's got there in Delaware, that didn't just pay for itself. That's a lot of overdraft fees and God knows what else. That's how you pay for it. I think the speech was atrociously bad, and I don't say that to try to rain down on him because I don't think he's a good president. In fact, I think he borders on a failure as a president. He's a failure as a president because of the moment we're living in right now. If this was a presidency, of decent economic times, he would be considered a below average president. Right now, he's completely failing this country. People cannot afford to live. People cannot afford to succeed. There are so many missed opportunities. But again, it's just a speech. The tone deafness of the speech was unbelievably bad. There are a lot of places you could go in terms of what he said. That was the absolute worst. And of course, we'll address this tomorrow night on our podcast. But I mean, to me, I think without question, his handling of the conversation regarding the environment was such a colossal failure. And the idea he's talking out of two sides of his mouth, literally saying that the climate crisis is the existential threat of our time. Oh, and by the way, we must rely on oil and gas as our primary source of energy for at least the next decade. And when you talk in those terms, why don't you just warm up the fucking seat for DeSantis right now? Why don't you do it? Because you're handing it to them. You have nothing to run on. Nothing.
This smart guy, Jordan Chariton, just tweeted that. United Nations, under 10 years till irreversible damage to the planet from climate crisis. Biden, we need fossil fuels for 10 more years.
It wasn't even that he said we needed fossil fuels for 10 more years. He said we need it as our principal energy source for the next 10 years.
Yes.
That son of a bitch.
Oh, and that's because he's, there are several pipelines. There's one in Kentucky, the Alaskan pipeline as well, the Mountain Valley pipeline, which is going to stretch 75 miles, that he just visited Appalachia with Joe Manchin in West Virginia to push that pipeline. And that is going to cause pollution. And that is going to make it harder on the residents. And that big oil is sitting there just waiting to rake in the money from and happen. So he's literally rolling back the protections from the Obama administration, the few that we had, the only couple good things Obama did, and is moving forward, rolling back even more than what Trump rolled back while he was in office.
And if anybody is, it's funny. It's like right now we're living in a situation where there is an opening for somebody to get in there and run to his left, run to everybody's left, but run a scorched earth type campaign that basically calls all of this out. Whether it succeeds or not is kind of irrelevant. It just needs to be said. That's the point. It is so concretely obvious that both parties are completely co-opted by corporate special interests. It was on full display tonight. And the way that I got to tell you, I don't watch all of these, but I've been watching them for probably since the end of Clinton's administration. I got to tell you, I've never seen a prop scenario like I saw tonight. I've never seen a president put more people up there as props like this president did tonight. It was so embarrassing. It was so poor taste and cringeworthy. And if you didn't know any better, you would think this entire speech was about Bono because he shared as much screen time as Joe did.
Well, listen, let's be fair. Biden is not the first president, certainly won't be the last, that uses props, widows, parents of slain.
This was overkill.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm just saying it's a standard practice. What I think was specifically egregious about this, Tyree Nichols' parents, I'm not against inviting them, pointing it out, but if you're not going to present anything new, if you're not actually going to go out there and put it on the line and say, we need, as the Democratic Party and as a country, to call for the end of special privileges for police, that doesn't, he could say it however he wants. That doesn't mean demonize the police, but we need to end qualified immunity so the police know that, doing what they did to Tyree will not only have criminal costs, but will have civil penalty too. That is the only reason I would be okay with bringing parents in mourning to use as props. Why have them there if you're just going to throw out a bunch of bullshit and you're not going to present any new policy? It's absurd. It's absurd. And that's not just for Tyree Nichols' parents. Other people he uses props up there, including the Uvalde. I think he had a Uvalde student too. Yeah, that's great. Assault weapon is great. Assault weapons ban is important, but it's not just about the assault weapons. The American Prospect has a great article. They did it in the beginning of his presidency about 100 executive actions Biden could take right now. And some of them involve guns. It's not just the assault weapons. It's the high capacity magazines, the way you could modify the guns. I mean, there's so many things. So I just think the way he used these props, I must have missed the part. I don't really know why Bono was there. I missed Bono's role in all this, but Bono's role in all this, but yeah, it didn't look good.
Take a guess. Probably made a substantial donation to the Democratic National Committee. That would be my guess.
Oh, I'm sure, but
just a thought.
My point is, I don't know what the stated reason they gave for shouting out Bono. I have no idea. But yeah, no, this was very weak. And I think you're right, Peter. You and I might disagree in terms of Trump versus DeSantis. I think DeSantis, to this point, has gotten a free ride for the media. I don't think he's as strong as a candidate as people think he is. I think if Trump is indicted, it would make Trump a martyr in the Republican Party. It's kind of like the Bernie Warren effect, how a lot of Bernie people went to Warren at first, but then came home to Bernie. I think the same thing would happen with kind of Trump supporters who have wandering eyes to DeSantis, but might go back to Trump. Trump is already going scorched earth. I don't know if you saw he
today accused DeSantis of being a pedophile or some shit.
Yeah, I saw that.
If people think they have no idea what they're in for with this primary, because if DeSantis gets in there, DeSantis is not afraid of him. And I think that that's why it's going to be this whole like fisticuffs, and these guys are going to stand on the side. You know, this is one of the things that's very interesting about the Republican voter. And I want to share a story before we finish that happened just the other day that I thought was very telling. One thing that is very interesting when it comes to the independent and like libertarian right-leaning voter in this country, they actually are real free-thinking individuals. What I mean by that is, let's say it is Trump versus DeSantis, but you have all these other underlings that are in the race, whether it is Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, whoever's going to get in. And they're all going to run. They're going to go all in their directions and all that stuff. And then when push comes to shove, as the primary really gets into the high season, and everyone's looking at, who's it going to come down to, is there going to be this coalescing, if you will, like they did to Bernie in 2020 behind Joe? Are they going to coalesce behind DeSantis to try to take out Trump? I got to tell you, I think that the mindset of the voter that would be voting in the GOP primary would look at something like that and say, go fuck yourself. Now I'm definitely going to vote for Trump because you think you're going to sabotage the electoral process. I think it would be I think they would get the opposite of the intended effect, because on their side, they actually stand up for themselves. They believe in what they believe, and they hate the establishment. And for some reason, the Democratic primary voter is still in love with the establishment. That's why when you showed that graphic earlier, when it came to where do Republicans and even independents stand when it comes to Joe Biden's approval as a president, the Republicans approve him 7% and independents approve him like 11%, whereas Democrats approve him, as bad as he's been, at 77%. The effect of corporate media, especially when it comes to CNN and MSNBC, it's very real. I know everyone likes to talk about Fox News, but they do not have a hold on their voter the way that the CNN and MSNBC has on the Democratic voter. Of those particular viewers, it's really, really bad. And that's where I stand.
I think ultimately, I mean, listen, 2 years, Zeynab, you know this, you've done over 100 campaigns. 2 years is a fucking eternity. A lot of things could change. We could have indictments. We could have deaths. I don't even mean that jokingly. I mean, these people are very old. But ultimately right now, what I think it comes down to for Biden, unless something radically changes, is this. Yeah. The reason, and this is Colin put this together, the reason that Biden won in 2020 was very simple. I saw it in the data, and I saw it when I was on the road. Trump badly mismanaged COVID. I think if Trump would have given one more check for like $2,000, he would be the president today. He actually blamed McConnell for the McConnell not delivering. I
got to tell you, I kind of believe Trump on that. I do. I think that Trump intended to give the second check, and it probably would have been for $2,000. He would have given it. I think it was like the second week of October or third week of October, somewhere around there. And McConnell absolutely stonewalled him. And
that did happen. That's what happened.
And that's why it's going to be very interesting.
So my point in that, Biden, yes, he won, but the point is Trump really lost that election because during a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, he fucked around. He pushed conspiracy theories. He told you to drink bleach. He didn't take it seriously. And, what we saw was what we saw. Biden was barely campaigning. Then in the midterms, again, contrary to the spin you hear from the pundits, Roe v. Wade and the overturning of Roe v. Wade saved the Democratic Party. They did not do as well as they did because Biden is so popular. But all of these broken promises are going to come back to haunt Biden, and the parliamentarian will not save him in a year and a half. He did nothing on a $15 minimum wage, which at this point is the conservative position. We should be talking about $25 minimum wage. Public option, abandoned that right away when he got elected. End drilling on public land, has increased drilling on public land. PRO-Act, police reform, gave police $32 billion more. $2,000 checks, gave you $1,400 and a kick in the ass. He said in the debates and ran on, if you get COVID and are hospitalized, the care would be free. That's a lie. You could talk to plenty of people who are nearly bankrupt from the hospital bills. Child tax credit was a 1-year Band-Aid, which really helped a lot of people. When I was on the road, that was one of the things that was the thing that really, really was helping people. They actually praised Biden and the Democrats for that. But Biden didn't fight it and allowed Manchin and Sinema to basically block everything when Biden could have used the bully pulpit of the presidency to at least shame them. He didn't even try. Subsidized childcare, ending right to work. That's just a partial list. There's other broken promises. Of course, whether it's Biden or anyone, Zeynab, you can't deliver everything. But you also, if you don't actually fight for any of it, you lose points for that too. Say what you want about Bernie Sanders. If he was president, we might not have Medicare for all right now. You know he would be fighting for it.
Well,
we'd have a public option.
Yeah, you know he would be taking executive actions to expand it.
People keep talking about this voter demographic in the way that we have to realize that the last several cycles have been heavily people from suburban America, not people from the urban areas, and not as much. Some rural areas have a decent amount of turnout. But what is determining these, a lot of these elections lays in the hands of the wine moms in suburbia, and the upper middle class Americans, upper middle class. So right now we have a growing demographic of millennials and Gen Z that is the largest voting bloc in American history. And one thing that we kind of keep doing is basing where voters are going to go on past elections. This election, Biden's election was already kind of on the cusp of that, but this election is where we're really going to see where this new massive bubble of voters is going to go. Are they going to register? Are they going to feel mobilized? Are they going to feel mobilized for this Democratic president after speeches like the one he gave tonight? Probably not, because most of these people are further left or independent. Most of these people support Medicare for all. Most of these people want to see tuition-free college. Most of these people want, subsidized childcare and unions. So if you don't have somebody running for president, I don't know what choice we're giving them. But I do know that the Democrats, the Republicans, the pundits on MSNBC, the pundits on Democracy Now!, everyone is talking about the middle class, and everyone is out of touch with the working poor. And so as long as we have that going on, I don't know what the hell's going to happen. Because if some insurgent candidate comes in there and they're able to talk to those people, actually able to talk to them, we might see something completely out of the establishment. And that's coming from somebody who is poor, grew up poor, from this neck of the woods, ain't from suburbia. I grew up in a trailer park. And I'm telling you, when you talk to people, they don't vote because they think both people are full of shit. So if we get someone in there that energizes a base like that, and Trump did one fraction of that base to a certain extent, but most of his voters were upper middle class suburbanites too.
Well, I will say, and Zeynab, we had, I'm so tired from my newborn. I'm forgetting days.
I'm sorry.
Whatever was it yesterday we did the third party show? Yeah. Yesterday we did the third party show. And for any of you who have newborns, suddenly my newborn, she was making progress and she was sleeping about 4 or 5 hours. Now she's back to 2 hours. So it's been a rough couple days. Anyway, I don't know if a third party candidate or an independent would win. I agree, Zeynab. You called me out yesterday. To be clear, it's not that it's impossible. It's just an uphill climb, obviously. But I think Biden is incredibly weak. I think Trump, if he got the nomination, would be weak and possibly under indictment. which means I personally think in 2016, if Bernie would have dropped out, after they rigged it and run independent or Green Party, I think he had a shot to win. You had two of the most unpopular candidates in American history in Trump and Hillary. I don't know if Bernie could have, because we just learned last night for the Green Party candidate that the dirty break strategy is not allowed.
It is for the presidency.
Oh, it is for the presidency. Okay. So I stand corrected. However, I think Bernie had a shot because he was running against Dumb and Dumber and two of the most unpopular candidates. That could be the case again, because obviously Biden ain't popular even in his own party, and Trump would still be wildly unpopular. So there is an opening, if not victory, to have one of the best performances since Ross Perot, who, what was that, 1992, who ran, he ran as an independent. So, yeah, I mean.
And he bungled the shit out of that campaign, but he had money. He was on TV. He ran the TV ads on, national TV, pumped a lot of money into it. He dropped out of the race in the middle of summer, pops back in at the end of the fall, and next thing you know, he gets, 20% of the vote. He didn't scoop a state, but I mean, look, I think it just goes to show you that the country is interested. But remember, when people run in the Green Party, when they run in the Libertarian Party, when they run in whatever parties trying to form now,
or not one at all, independent.
There you go. Money talks and justice walks. If you're not able to get your message out there, then it doesn't really matter. We haven't really seen a great candidate attempt to run in a third party, even though I do think that Jesse Ventura would have caused a real stir if he was the Green Party candidate in 2020, because he has the type of personality that can really capture the country. And I do think that if somebody was like that could step up. I've always maintained if there is somebody in labor that is able to do it, that's the only way it's going to happen. One thing I noticed the other day that I wanted to bring up before we depart, for those who don't know me, I do.
One second. I just want to make clear to everybody watching, you better subscribe to Peter Hager's YouTube channel, Generational Change, after the display he has put on today. Remember, for you Status Coup viewers, 5 hours ago, he came on as Bill Clinton for a great performance, and then just did an hour as Bernie Sanders. So you better subscribe, Generational Change.
Please put that banner up. That would be great.
Yes,
that would be really great, really incredible.
I'll do better.
So while you're doing that, I will share a little story. For those of you who don't know me, I am in South Florida. I was Jen Perlman's campaign manager against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the 2020 Democratic primary. I've been a small business owner for over a decade, and recently I started doing commercial real estate. And I was at a place the other day where, let's just say, it was a low-income area. And we were touring one of the rooms that one of the dwellers was in. And this person didn't have much, but I'll tell you what he did have. He had a laptop and he was watching a YouTube channel. And this is a person who would really benefit from a labor movement, a labor revolution, if you will, in the United States. But who do you think he's watching? He's not watching this. He's watching Tim Pool. That's who he's watching. And if that doesn't signal where this country is right now, that people in that type of a living situation are finding their way to somebody like Tim Pool, who is not espousing the message that needs to be heard right now, but is one of this desperation where you wonder where people get so angry at the world. They end up watching channels like that because there isn't this cohesion on the left, within the labor movement, and especially within the Democratic Party. There is no voice for these individuals. There are millions of men like him around the country who are tuning in to channels like Tim Pool, like Steven Crowder, like Ben Shapiro. That is who they're listening to. There's a reason why their numbers are so ridiculously high. When people become desperate, they're looking for the outlet that is going to talk to them in a way that doesn't make them feel like the world wants them to just drop dead because they're not useful anymore. We don't have that. The Democratic Party is the party of Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and the military-industrial complex. Full stop. And for anybody that's on the Hill right now, listen, there's a wonderful young gentleman, Maxwell Frost, who just got elected to Congress, who's down here, who's not corporate.
You have a number of them that are on the Hill right now, but they're not doing anything. And the more we keep pushing this off like it's just magically going to get better, it's not. It's going to get worse. And if the speech that Biden gave tonight is any indication, good God, we're in big freaking trouble.
And I got to say, and beautiful dog there, I got to say, at the end of the day, I think people, and to be clear, I've seen this on the road too, Peter. People aren't watching Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, certainly not Ben Shapiro, Steve Bannon's podcast. I mean, name your fucking Republican conservative Steven Crowder, because they're so charismatic or they're so whatever. People are angry.
Yeah.
They are economically pissed off, and that's what Trump preyed on. People are tired of the establishment. People are tired of the lies. People are tired of the elites. And when you have that anger, which is justified, it's easy to kind of be fooled by kind of phony populist rhetoric, and also be fooled by people showing you or pointing you in the direction of who to blame, even though those people are totally for fucking you on taxes, fucking you on name your economic principle.
And telling you that you can change it yourself, that
Right.
you don't have to rely on Congress, or you don't have to, you can do it yourself. You know, the whole bootstrapping narrative has an appeal because it gives people hope. A lot of leftists have completely lost hope because a lot of people's hope was in the squad. It was in Bernie. It was in our representatives do something. So now this anger is getting channeled into God only knows where, because at least with them, it's a false narrative, but they're giving people a false hope. You can do it yourself. You know, Ayn Rand independence. And that's really, I believe that's part of everything else you said, but also that is one of the things that autonomy attracts people.
Exactly. But I'll say, and I think Marianne Williamson made a mistake, frankly, when I interviewed her recently, because I basically just laid it up for her to hit it. When I said, you know, I think Bernie Sanders, he made a lot of mistakes. And one of them was just basically not willing to go there. Remember, Zephyr Teachout, who was a surrogate for Bernie's campaign, wrote a piece for The Guardian with facts, pointing out that Joe Biden has a corruption problem. Believe it or not, that would be a popular message to Democratic Party voters. Trump, he was full of shit, but he called them all out in 2016. He called out Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, the elites, the establishment, McConnell, Paul Ryan. He called them corrupt. He pointed out that he bought them off through donations. He said he bought off the Democratic politicians too. And the people gravitated towards that because corruption is unpopular across the board, on the right and the left, neoliberals and libertarians. Sure, I think some of the baby boomer generation, not all baby boomers, because we got a lot of great ones in our audience, but there's a lot of baby boomers and the silent generation, which is the oldest generation, that have kind of become okay and complacent with that corruption. Their attitude, that's just politics. Well, most people don't think that way. And most people are not okay with corruption. And I think whether it's somebody running in the Democratic primary or as a third party, if you're not going to go all the way and go scorched earth, if you're not going to call them corrupt, if you're not going to do a little version of Shama Sawant on a national level, you're going to lose. Because sorry to the people who are thinking about, are all about third party. Either way, it's going to be rigged, whether it's against running in the Democratic Party, or they're going to try to rig it against running in a third party. Go ask Matthew Ho recently. Go ask Jill Stein. So it's not like I'm not saying don't run third party. I'm just saying the elites are going to try to rig it either way. But the point is, however you're running, whether it's independent, Green Party, a different party, or in the Democratic Party, if we don't have a candidate willing to go there, to call them corrupt, to name names, to name the donors, to call them corrupt for the insider trading, to actually say they are committing crimes that are legal. And from what I've heard, Marianne Williamson is not willing to go there, at least now. I think that's a huge opportunity that they're missing, because this is an angry moment. Americans are pissed off and angry. That's why you have seen a lot of people who are former Berners and Bernie people just say, to hell with it. If they're running as a Democrat, I'm not considering them. So, yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts. But I think that why Biden and this bullshit tonight is going to land. It'll land well with pundits on TV, but with the American people, it's going to fall flat.
Well, that's another thing. We don't want another representative that's going to talk at us or talk down to us. So, we don't even necessarily want one that has advisors that are going to bullshit us either. So people are going to be able to sniff that out. I mean, they may be harder on a candidate that's like outside of the beltway that acts like that, but isn't genuine than they would be on someone who's, a liberal privileged person. But you're going to have to, I think whoever it is going to have to be in touch with what it's like to be struggling, in touch with what everyday people are going through, in touch with what it's like to have to keep your lights on, in touch with not being able to buy a house or barely being able to pay your bills. I mean, actually know it, not just talk about it. Because if there's not that person, I don't think that they're going to win. I don't think that some other privileged multi-millionaire, I mean, they might, don't get me wrong, but I think that it's going to be more of the same.
I mean, honestly, the only person who really comes to mind is Nina. It is unfortunate that, she bungled her circumstance regarding, the congressional seat in Cleveland. But she's the kind of voice that this moment needs right now. And if it's not her, then somebody who's able to espouse a very similar message. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be bad. But somebody needs to be able to capture that fire that Bernie had in 2016 again, because that's really what's missing. It's been missing since then. And it is a shame that Bernie didn't trust his instincts the way he should have, and knew that if he just ran the same way in 2020 as he did in 2016, he would have been president. He didn't have to tiptoe around things like Russia. He didn't have to completely cave in to this idea that I should just go on, the Sunday morning shows all the time instead of neglecting independent media and things like that. He had a real opportunity. I always love him and what he's done to help change the narrative. But he, like this guy Relly just said, Bernie fumbled it. He did. And we hate that that's the case because so many people are so desperate right now. Honestly, the worse it gets every day, the more you're yearning for somebody who can give a speech like a Nina Turner, who could just get out there and tell them, no, actually, the government works for us, not the other way around. And that's what America needs to hear right now. Because I do worry. When people are just like, oh, just take the guns away. Oh, just do this. No, people are desperate and they don't give a shit anymore. And they'll find a way to take a weapon and hurt people. There's going to be tons more of police brutality stories coming up, because more and more people are going to get desperate. More and more people are going to meet the fist of, the guardians at the gate, if you will, to basically tell them, do not even think about getting out of line, because we do not hesitate to execute. That's basic. This has turned into, it's like we're looking at the Russian Revolution all over again. It's just, we're like this fucking close. And it's scary. Jordan, you talk about all the time. Most people really don't know what's going on out in the rest of the country. And I always say, if you don't know what it's like to drink contaminated water, then honestly, shut up, because you just don't know. That type of economic anxiety will literally drive you insane.
As we wind down, and don't go anywhere because we have a public service announcement. The last thing I'll say is, the reality is there's two options if you want to win on the Senate level, congressional level, but let's just talk president right now. You're either going to create a historic situation where you're going to get a record amount of people who have not voted traditionally, and you're going to register them, and you're going to get non-voters out and build a brand new coalition. Bernie tried to do that to a certain degree. That's not impossible. Zeynab, you've talked about that and the importance of registering voters and organizing and, reaching out to the largest voting base, which is the non-voter. So that's option number one, and not relying on like the normie Democrat and kind of older voter. Or the second option is by the percentages, millennials actually outnumber the baby boomer generation. But by the percentages of who votes, it's still the baby boomers and the silent generation vote the most. across the board, midterms, presidential, and that's the 65 up. That particularly in the primaries, if we're talking a Democratic primary, that is who votes by the percentages the most. There are more millennial and Gen Z than baby boomers, but for whatever reason, they don't come out at the highest percentage. I said in 2020, the only shot Bernie had was if he plucked off 7 to 10% of the normie Democrats, which were like the Hillary Obama types. If he couldn't get 7 to 10% of the normie Democrats, he wasn't going to win. Yes, it was rigged and all that. We know that. They rigged it. But for a short period, if you remember, Bernie had momentum. David Sirota and the campaign were attacking Biden's campaign for Biden's previous statements on Social Security and privatizing Social Security. Biden was actually hemorrhaging support among older voters for a very short period to Bernie Sanders. When Bernie was won Iowa, New Hampshire, that's when older voters started leaving Biden and going to Bernie's campaign for a short period. So it's not impossible to thread the line. It's not impossible to excite young people. It's not impossible to get out non-voters. It's not impossible on policy to attract older voters who might be brainwashed to thinking you're radical or this and that. But on policy, if you target the issues they care about, which in the case I just described was Social Security, Medicare, that older people were seeing those ads showing Joe Biden as a senator saying we need to pause these things. So the problem is
Medicare for all is one of, if somebody ran truly on Medicare for all, that's how Obama won in 2008. That's how he won. That's how he came in. You know, I was like, they're grooming him to be president 3 or 4 years before. But Peter, you and I talked about that because you said you saw it too. But they brought him in, but he spoke about universal single payer health care. You know who else did? Bill Clinton, our buddy that was on earlier tonight or earlier today. He also pushed health care.
I admit that I can never tell the truth.
But at the end of the day, it's a long road. But I'll just say, maybe the Democratic Party thinks they'll be bailed out again in a year. Maybe they think that somehow there will be a threat of a national abortion ban and they could run on that. Maybe they think there will be some other singular culture war, social issue that they could run on. Right now, that doesn't look likely because, I mean, unless DeSantis or Trump are going to run on a national abortion ban, which I'm not sure either are stupid enough to do. Maybe Trump is, I don't know. But right now, I don't see that magic bullet that can save the Democratic Party of COVID and Trump's mishandling or the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. I think inflation is going to kind of stay stubborn. The unemployment number might be artificially low, but we see the polls. People aren't feeling it despite the propaganda. So we'll stay on it. And Zeynab, since you're a lot nicer than I, maybe you could kindly ask people and explain why they should consider donating to Status Coup.
Sure. Let's see. Let's put this up here. We are, to our $112,000 to our $20,000 goal, but we are only $2,000 away, a little less than $2,000 away from our $10,000 goal. That would help set us out strong in 2023. We already have things that we need to be on the ground covering. We need to go back to Cop City, talk to folks down there. You know, there's been some recent developments. There may even be stalling. I don't think that's going to hold for very long. The recent autopsy from Tortuguita's murder showed that he was shot 13 times by multiple police. And also, as we reported earlier today, was it a member? Who was it that quit?
Yeah, so earlier today, a member of the advisory committee for Cop City resigned because of the police killing the protester Manuel Tehran. Police say that Manuel Tehran, if you don't know the story, real quick, Cop City is a $90 million militarized police compound that they're trying to build in a public forest in Atlanta. It would, we think, be about 200 to 300 acres. It would have areas for police to set off explosives, ammunition training, and it would be dumped right on top of a black community that is 75% black. Of course, Raphael Warnock, the Democratic senator, John Ossoff, the Democratic senator, are saying nothing. And recently, there have been protesters out since 2021 in the forest protesting and trying to block trees from being cut down to build this totally unnecessary police compound. They have been protesting at the top of trees, literally building tree houses and staying up there in the hot, in the cold. And police just went in and literally killed one of them. Police say that protester shot at them. Of course, there is zero evidence provided of that. Police just say it, and the media runs with it because whatever police say, the media report as fact.
And body cams were conveniently turned off.
Right.
For some of the forces required to use them. Yeah.
Body cams were conveniently turned off, but the family did a private autopsy, which showed that the Chariton was shot 13 times by several police officers. So I find it kind of hard to believe that in self-defense, several police officers shot this environmental protester 13 times. By the way, because we were on the ground, Tina Desiree Berg did great reporting for us down there. She interviewed one of the protesters who, by the way, the second part of the story, 20 protesters have been charged with domestic terrorism.
20 now?
Yes. 20 protesters. 20 protesters have been charged with domestic terrorism. We broke the story on our Substack, StatusCoup.com, StatusCoup.substack.com, I think, that they are literally charging protesters with domestic terrorism for the crime of protesting in a tree, of possessing road flares, of possessing what they call incendiary devices, from fleeing the police, and you fleeing the police leading to a policeman to have scrapes and cuts. You are now being charged in the United Corporations of America with domestic terrorism, essentially for protesting. So this is serious fucking shit, people. It's not being covered in the media. If it is being covered in the media, it's barely being covered, and it's being propagandized on behalf of police. We want to go back there. I think this is a mega story because let me tell you something. It might not be the same thing. They're trying to build new police training centers in other places, Chicago, and other places. And if they get away with it here, what makes you think it ain't coming to a neighborhood by you? And by the way, it's a pretty big deal. I was at Standing Rock on and off for 7 months. I got shot in the leg by a rubber bullet in my calf. I still have a scar in my calf. Fortunately, it wasn't a real bullet. Fortunately, nobody got straight up killed at Standing Rock, but it's a pretty big fucking deal when an environmental, Stephen Donziger said, as far as we know, this is the first environmental protester killed by police in America. That's a pretty big deal. And I haven't seen anyone cover it like we have or go on the ground. So we want to send people back to Cop City. We also are sending Louis DeAngelis to the border soon. With a translator, it's probably going to cost us $600 to $700 a day. So we're not asking you for money to go play, blackjack. We're asking you for money to do on the ground reporting. Trigger alert. You don't have to agree with me on every single political issue. I hope we could all agree this on the ground reporting is very important. So
we've had news stories come in, Jordan, and you can send stories our way at statuscoup.com/join. Part of the thing that we're fundraising for is so that we can hear stories from you, from your community that the mainstream media isn't covering. We caught wind of Cop City long before the mainstream media was covering it. We were one of the first to talk to protesters who were protesting at Cop City in Atlanta, for instance. So if you email us at info@statuscoup.com, we will take a look at what you guys send in. And we actually have several stories that have already been sent in to us about potentially poisoned water, union actions that are happening, workers' rights issues, corruption, uncovering corruption in local governments, in workplaces. So please email us things that are being ignored. Email us things that are going on in your community. We want to know about it. Back in the day, nobody was talking about Flint. Nobody paid attention to Jackson, Mississippi. Nobody paid attention to Cop City. Nobody paid attention to what happened to Michael Brown in Ferguson. So we want to be able to share your stories. We're giving the microphone back to people, and that's why we need help, because we don't take money from corporations. We don't have some big billionaire funding us so that we can have videos on Rumble. We're not taking any money from Birch Gold. We're not taking we're not walking supplements every day. So it's you guys. And there's not a whole heck of a lot of public funded independent media out there. Even the people that call themselves indie media, a lot of them are taking money from elsewhere. So please, if you can help us out, it would mean the world. We got a bigger staff now. We got more people pitching in, and we could use your help.
As I always like to say, we take no money from Wall Street, no money from the fossil fuckers, no money from Big Pharma, no money from big real estate, no money from Silicon Valley, no money from the military industrial complex, no money from George Soros, no money from the remaining Koch brother, no money from the sugar daddies funding the Republican or Democratic Party. Our funding comes from you, the people. And we are pretty judicious and frugal. I mean, an average trip for us costs like $2 to $3 grand. And we make that money go for like 5 or 6 days between a cameraman, a reporter, flights, hotel, rent a car, food, equipment. Peter, you've seen me on the road. I'm a pretty cheap motherfucker, believe it or not.
I've helped you. I've helped you out a few times.
Yes. So, and thank you for being a supporting member. So please support us if you can. You know, I think too many times in progressive media and independent media, it's become this tribal thing where if people are not hearing their views fed back to them 1,000% of the time, it's like unsubscribe or you're canceled or I'm not supporting you. Listen, if you don't want to financially support us and you want to support somebody else, that's fine. Support somebody. But as humbly as I could say it, I don't see anyone else doing the on-the-ground reporting that we're doing. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of planning, a lot of money, a lot of investigative reporting that goes into it. And we really appreciate it. Obviously, if you can't financially support us, we totally understand. You know, tough times for everybody. Share our videos.
Like, subscribe. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's supporting. Come join in the chat sometimes when you have time, join in the conversation. That helps. And we love to hear from everybody too. And also it gives us an opportunity to learn about your stories on the ground when you're in the chat, participating that way as well.
Absolutely. And a reminder, please, right when this ends, go subscribe to Generational Change. Peter and his partner, Jen Perlman, who ran for Congress against W. Wasserman Schultz, they do great work too. They have gone on the road and volunteered for political causes. But Peter, give people real quick what you guys cover there at Generational Change.
So it's not just about electoral politics. Obviously, the goal of Generational Change is to transform politics into service. We are in South Florida. We are in Trump land, DeSantis land, whatever you want to call it. One of the biggest reasons that has happened is the Democratic Party is completely inept in this state, deliberately in many ways, in my opinion. What we really also try to do is cross-pollinate, as Jen likes to say, with other independent media channels, and not all ones that we agree with. That is not how the change will happen. I think it's very important that we do these crossover conversations because audiences need to be aware of one another. The algorithm absolutely destroys what we're doing. Our channel is, from what I understand, shadow banned. So, the only people who are really going to know about it is word of mouth, referrals, things like that. So we certainly hope that you will check us out. We will go live tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be live with hopefully, State Senator Chevron Jones, who has basically been at the forefront of leading the charge against Governor DeSantis regarding the banning of AP African American Studies in school, which again is just another culture war BS distraction from the fact that cost of living in the state of Florida is absolutely obscene. We're in a state that is, in many ways, I think, ground zero for a labor movement. We are a state that is highly based on the hospitality industry. A lot of people work the type of jobs that are not properly taken care of, especially when it comes to living wage and obviously health benefits. So those are one of many of the fights that we do our very best to get the word out to, and people have been made aware of what our attempts are, what electoral prospects in the future may be or not be. Not sure yet, but we're going to continue to be in the fight. And obviously, all the work that Jordan and Zeynab do here at Status Coup is immensely important. And if you guys can continue to support it and refer to as many friends and family as you know, retweeting, liking, sharing, all of that makes a difference, even if you can't contribute financially, because eventually someone's going to see it that can. So do everything that you can to help them. And obviously, if you are so inclined, subscribe to our channel and click the bell, and we hope to see you tomorrow night.
And by the way, apparently we missed Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, I saw the. I already saw the picture.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
If you think Cinema was dressed like a clown, Marjorie was like, "Oh no, I got you, baby. I got you. I got one up on you on that one."
So Marjorie Taylor Greene, who by the way is not even subtly campaigning to be Trump's vice president, screamed out liar at Joe Biden. So I'm sure the media is in a tizzy.
In her white fur coat, mind you.
Right. She probably got that from the proceeds she made from her $15,000 investment to Lockheed Martin and her other $15,000 investment to Chevron. Both investments made 2 days before Russia invaded Ukraine. That's anti-war Marjorie. So she probably made good coin on these wars that she proclaims to be so against. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Zaina, doing double time. She was the host of our 5 o'clock show, and
thanks for all the super chats too. We had a bunch more come in. I saw Humorous, I think, gave another
let me see, because I don't want to miss them. Humorous, $5. Oh hell, Michael, you're correct. He's not wearing my favorite color either. I unsubscribe. Damn, I really like this show too. Seriously, man. I mean, it's just gotten insane. For example, I saw Steve Grumbine did a video on Sunday, I guess, criticizing Richard Wolff, Professor Richard Wolff, who I like. I like Richard Wolff. I didn't have time to watch Steve's whole video. I know Steve has asked Richard Wolff for an interview, so he's tried to speak with Richard Wolff, but criticized him on economics or whatever. And boy, did that trigger a lot of people. Unsubscribe. Why? Because somebody criticized Richard Wolff? It's like the progressives need to stop being snowflakes. Seriously. I mean, it's getting a little out of hand that, I unsubscribe because you attacked my hero and this and that. Like, don't be like, this is a very right-wing mentality, folks. This is like the Fox News viewer and the Rush Limbaugh listener who, if they don't hear what they want to hear 24, same thing with MSNBC viewers, by the way. If you don't hear what you want to hear 24/7, it's like, I'm changing the channel.
But Jordan, we got to be a little careful not to use that language to be like right wingers either, because right now I've been arguing with people all week who think that racism, blatant, racism is just a difference of opinion. They think that American imperialism is just a difference of opinion, or that Christian white nationalism is just a difference of opinion.
Listen,
when it comes to oppressing other people, that's where you got to draw a line sometimes.
Let me just.
But that's not what you're doing. Differences in political opinion, like how our tax structure may be different, or whether we like one candidate that has one policy plank that another one doesn't. It all depends. There's nuance.
Just remember, it is a lot easier to oppress people and to not care one way or the other regarding racism, bigotry, sexism, etc., when the system is falling apart. People are not being served. So to allow the culture war to dominate the conversation, to me, that is deliberate. Not to say that these issues aren't important. They are, but
that they're killing people right now.
Of course.
Almost every woman in the country has been sexually assaulted once.
Oh yeah. Oh, Jen talks about that a lot.
This is one of those things.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that are causing that problem. Domestic violence is up 30%. 19 families have already been murdered this year by a violent partner.
Yeah.
So people put this in the culture war bucket, and they're doing it on the left. And I'm passionate about it because we have Tortuguita being shot by the police because of his race in part. It's killing people. these culture wars that some people are calling it are killing people right now just as much as the economic is. Yes, it's tied in together, but we can't ignore one for the hand of the other.
And that's part of why.
Not to be rude, Peter.
That's okay. That's part of why I went down to Florida last year to cover your governor's "Don't Say Gay" bill, which a lot of people consider a culture war. But you want to know something? Florida's got the highest suicide rate in America among LGBTQ and trans kids. And it's not made easier or better when their own governor makes them the bullseye of a culture war. But I will also say, to Zeynab's point, and what she's referring to, let's just put our cards on the table, is this quote unquote anti-war rally that's coming up. Listen, I would show up. To me, my mentality is this. I have no problem having Thanksgiving dinner with my Republican uncle or my neoliberal aunt or people that I don't agree with on most things. I draw the line at pedophiles. I draw the line at pedophiles. I draw the line at white supremacists. I do draw the line at people who have engaged in borderline sex trafficking, which I think somebody speaking at that rally has engaged in. I draw the line at people that I believe are credibly accused of sexual assault. So those are not people you have political disagreements with. Those are not people that you just, let's just table these things we disagree on. Those are people that we have fundamentally very, very different moral values. And I don't think for the cause of anti-war, which I don't even think most of the people speaking at this rally are actually anti-war, but that's
several of them have said, just to clarify before this rally, that they are actually not anti-war. They are pro-war in certain circumstances.
Can I just say,
just to make it clear before it happens?
So the bottom line is, I personally, I don't care if it's about Medicare for all. I don't care if it's about a Green New Deal. I don't care what it's about. I'm not going to speak at, and I probably wouldn't cover an event with these kinds of people. I totally, am fine with people I disagree with. I'm totally fine with people that I think have recklessly. When I say fine, I would compartmentalize and put things to the side with people that I believe have recklessly pushed conspiracy theories. I would put things aside for people that I don't have a lot of respect for. I would put things aside for people that I just think are full of it and bullshit artists and profiteers. But when you're talking about people who commit crimes, when you're talking about people that abuse people, when you're talking about people that oppress the most vulnerable among us, I ain't breaking bread with those people. I'm not speaking at their rally. I'm not covering their rally. And if you don't like it, I don't care. Anyway.
And I also think it's very important to note that, look, there's going to be people in any movement that you're not going to agree with. I do not hold back in particular when it comes to Jackson Hinkle, because he is the benchmark in many ways of what a grifter looks like. And you should always use a person who is clearly, the guy, anyone who thinks that he's on your side or is actually fighting the good cause, he's now an employee of the Blaze. So come on, it's at some point you just have to say that it's a career and he's trying to make out of it. They say don't hate the player, hate the game. But a person like that has no business being a keynote speaker at an anti-war rally. Somebody like Medea Benjamin has every right to be a keynote speaker at an anti-war rally. There are other people who are going to be at this anti-war rally that are guest speakers that have...
Oh, Medea dropped. They're actually... Code Pink is doing a different rally.
Oh, they are? Okay, well, you know what? And I was going to mention a few other names. But the fact of the matter is, this is anti-war rallies are not meant for content creators to go there and get more subscribers and super chats and all of that stuff. If your concern is to have a rally that is specifically catered towards this message, then the people who should be speaking there are the ones who can really speak to it. Danny Sherzin, who has written about this, who has served in both Iraq and Afghanistan, is the type of person who should be speaking there. Medea Benjamin is the type of person who should be speaking there. Anthony Clark, who ran for Congress, who served in the military, should be speaking there. These are the types of people, if you want an anti-war rally, that's who should be speaking, not people who literally never get the hell out of their studio
and talk about the ills of the world, but then don't actually do anything to try to change it. That's the problem. And that's not to say that there aren't those who are going to do it who don't have good takes, because in many instances, the cream of the crop, if you will, of the group does have very good takes, but don't doubt for a second the intent of what that person and many others are trying to do. Their intent is to make money. And I don't fault people for trying to make money, but if your intent is to try to create an anti-war movement, this ain't the way to do it, because it's not going to work. If they want to be there, to cover it, wonderful. Who gives a shit? You talking at the rally, that don't fly. That's not what's going to get people there.
And by the way, can I just say, and I don't really give a fuck who doesn't like it, if every single person that is speaking at your rally is literally allergic to saying anything critical about Vladimir Putin or Russia, I have a hard time believing you're legitimately anti-war. And this is coming from somebody who has said Russia has legitimate grievances. Russia was lied to about NATO. But at the end of the day, Vladimir Putin and Russia are targeting civilian targets. They're killing God knows how many people. That doesn't mean that Ukraine is innocent and hasn't gone after Russians in the Donbass and et cetera, et cetera. But if you're anti-war, you got to be anti-war and anti-senseless death across the board. And when every single person is somehow allergic to criticizing Putin ever, and criticizing Russia for anything, and criticizing the just bombing malls, bombing busy centers where you're going to kill civilians, I really don't want to hear about how anti-war you are, because if you're anti-war, you need to be anti-senseless murder. And
look, Jordan, I don't fault the people that want to go there and show up either. I don't fault the people that are so desperate and they feel like we're on the brink of World War III, and they want to go and they want to make a stand and they want to march and they feel like this is the only thing that they can go to. I understand that feeling, and maybe 30,000 people would show up and then it'll muddy out the other messages. That would be wonderful. But what worries me is the other messages aren't anti-war. When it's not that, then I feel like it's more pageantry. The Women's March is a great example. A lot of people supported that. I saw that the Women's March was giving a ton of money to the Democratic Party and fueling the DNC. And I was like, what's going to happen with this? So people wore it as a badge of honor for a while until they realized that that's where the money was going. And it was really to back some of those candidates. And then a PAC was started. So, you got to be wary of what you're getting involved in. Do your homework, do your research, show up to support. But also it does matter who's speaking at it, because there's a lot of faux events. Like I would say, for instance, white nationalists, the Ku Klux Klan used to do feminist rallies. Did you guys know this? Back in the 1920s during women's suffrages, when women's was on the rise, the Ku Klux Klan used to do women's rights rallies, and they would speak about that one thing, but that was to normalize them as caring people. They also did several anti-war rallies during Vietnam and during World War II. So when we're looking at this, it does matter who is putting on an event, because at the end of the day, there may be other rhetoric that they're trying to normalize, and we should just be aware of this, because politics it's nuanced. Let's face it. And if anyone is telling you we're on the brink of nuclear war, so nothing else matters, it doesn't matter that people are dying of this or people dying of that, and Medicare for all doesn't matter anymore, housing doesn't matter anymore, women's issues such as, like I said, domestic violence and rape doesn't matter anymore. I'm sorry, but you've lost the plot, because those things are still harming people right now as well.
And last thing I'll say on this, because obviously it's late.
Yeah.
I don't like Tulsi Gabbard, for example. We're not talking about disagreeing on taxes. We're not talking about disagreeing on Medicare for all versus a public option. We're not talking about disagreeing on, political issues or economic issues or ideological issues. This is somebody who has come roaring out of the closet as to me, a hateful anti-LGBTQ, anti-trans bigot. I think she was always there and pretended not to be when she was, running in the Democratic Party. She had a history as doing some really saying and standing up for some really cruel anti-LGBTQ things. And when it was politically expedient for her, when she dropped out of the Democratic Party, she jumped on, DeSantis's "Don't Say Gay" bill, and now she's all about, women in sports, and we need to all this anti-trans shit. That's, to me, those aren't political differences. Those are Those are differences in values and morals.
Humanity.
Right. So you speak. People obviously free will, go to whatever rally you want. If they're holding other anti-war rallies that day, go. But to me, I don't really know how you talk about being anti-war, which has a moral connotation to it, but just compartmentalize, again, pedophiles, people involved in sex trafficking, people credibly accused of sexual crimes, and say, well, for the greater good, I'm going.
Or people that are openly pro-war. That's the big thing.
And by the way, one of the groups, what is it, Mrs. Caucus?
Peter.
Well, one of the groups, Mises Caucus, some pretty, I think, racist.
The Mises Caucus
history.
is definitely it isn't even a question of racism. The Mises Caucus is definitely what I would consider to be, if you want to see true, full-blown right-wing libertarianism, where it's all taxation is theft. I literally want to live off the grid, et cetera, full-blown anarchy. That's what they are. That's what they represent. We have
it's worse, Peter, because I was that for 10 years. And the Mises Caucus, they've transformed into Christofascism. So they're actually they're more along the lines of governmental control, but governmental control for Christo-fascist means, which I think is more dangerous in some ways. Because I was a libertarian, and I still have a lot of libertarian tendencies. I just changed on economics. A lot of libertarians are avoiding this rally and really upset about it because of the sexism, because of the sexual assault, because people are pro-war. So the libertarians, old school libertarians, are jumping out. They're jumping ship too. It's divisive and not unifying. But please go ahead. I just wanted to give you the update on the Mises Caucus, because they changed just about 2 months ago to this direction now.
Yeah, no, again, there's nothing wrong with being America first, but there's also this tendency to recognize that there are people who have ill intention, who is going to take full advantage of that, and it's easy to create enemies. It's always so interesting when you look at the attacks on, let's say, immigrants who are desperate. And again, that's a whole other can of worms regarding immigration policy. I have my feelings about it in regards to how it can and potentially should be done. But the point is, pointing the finger at somebody who's in a desperate situation, trying to better their lives, and they're willing to work for less than you are, that they're the cause of the problem. No, the cause of the problem is a broken system with people at the top who are able, because we have no labor laws in this country, let's be honest, are able to get slavery to still be acceptable in society. And basically saying we just need to close the border and that's going to solve the problem. No, what's going to solve the problem is having a labor revolution in the United States. A living wage, universal health care, and a clean energy movement. If we are not on that same path, which also includes anti-war and criminal justice reform, you are always going to have these racist, sexist, misogynistic contingencies within our society that are going to just get bigger and bigger because everyone's going to hate each other. We got to get past that shit. And if you're going to do an anti-war rally, don't have opportunists be speakers at the rally. Have real anti-war leaders who I have no doubt will be more than happy to be speakers at those rallies if you're actually serious about having an anti-war.
And with that said, I desperately need to go to bed. Thank you, Bernie Sanders / Peter Hager, Zeynab Day, all the audience. Thank you for the super chats. I hope, like we said, you guys will consider coming on, donating. That's statuscoup.com/donate. If you want to hear more about what we were just talking about, Zeynab, you're going on the Vanguard about that tomorrow?
Yes. I'm not sure what time, but I'll be going on with them tomorrow.
Zeynab Day will be on the Vanguard talking about the anti-war rally or the
chatting it up with Zach and Gavin.
Yes. Yep. Kim Brown will be hosting 5:00 Eastern tomorrow. She'll definitely have some takes on Biden's State of the Union. I'm sure. I talked to her today about it. He said a lot of things about his performance with African Americans. Yeah, we'll see what Kim Brown has to say about that. She always has great opinions. And also, Tommy Bayless will be hosting at 6 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. He'll have some thoughts, I'm sure. And like we said, we currently are in the process of planning some on-the-ground reporting trips. So if it's within your means, donate to Status Coup, statuscoup.com/donate, or become a member, statuscoup.com/join. We are going to be doing our monthly members call probably next week. I can't do it anymore so late because I have a newborn. So we might be shifting to do it a little earlier or on the weekend. We'll let you know. Because typically we go for like 2 hours and I can't do it so late. Thanks.
Well, I
Peter?
definitely have to drag you two on our podcast at some point soon. So
Peter, don't ask a newborn father to come on at 9 o'clock. I only do that for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, you and Steve both. You know, Jen likes to do the show late, but of course it's like we got to accommodate for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. You got to do your show at fucking
how about midnight. 7?
At midnight?
Is 7 reasonable? Would 7 be
7 I could do, yeah.
Okay. All right. So why don't we'll have like a family. We'll have like a family show on Generational Change very soon. Thank you for having me on very much.
And Peter,
yes.
Peter, if you do the Triple Crown, if you get that Biden impersonation down, you're going to be in hot demand. Okay, Trump's great. Your Bill Clinton is spot on. Bernie is terrific. We need Biden and possibly George Santos.
Oh, God, no. I ain't going to do George Santos. America.
Jordan, we do have 2 more super chats, and then we can close it out. So, but if Peter, if you need to go, that's okay. You don't have to wait around with us.
Where did I miss them?
I got him starred. I can pull him up. It's okay. We got Fly Chop a Fly. Z, been trying to convince people of that opinion. And that was around, I guess, 11:21. So he was talking about how differences, those aren't just differences of opinion, I would assume is what they're talking about there. Humorous, $5. Oh, hell, Michael, you're correct. He's not wearing my favorite color either. I unsubscribed. Damn. I really like this show too.
And you know what? Honestly, somebody said to me earlier, because for some reason I got all the grief for an article written about Jimmy Dore today that I didn't write, but that's different. Somebody said to me, "Oh, you're jealous of people with bigger channels." I got news for you. I go to sleep a happy man, and I obviously we want more eyeballs and bigger viewership, but I'm okay with having a smaller viewership if it means my integrity is intact. I'm okay with that. I would much rather have a smaller audience of loyal viewers who appreciate what we do, on the ground reporting, cover what the corporate media covers up, than sell out to try and go for clicks. And I will.
And a final thought, because listen, like I said, there are takes that Jimmy has that I agree with 100%, and then there are takes that are so freaking out there that I have no words. He is an opportunist. And he's a very successful opportunist, like many others. He really let Jen down when she ran for Congress, when he came down here in 2019. And we'll leave it at that. That's a story for another day. And Double K coming in, one of our most amazing supporters, who obviously supports this channel as well.
Oh, thank you, Double K.
You know, unfortunately, drama sells, and he's really good at that. And a lot of channels are basically just piggybacking off of him. I don't think it pays to just do content creation talking about other channels. Let's talk about the things that really matter and that really affect everybody on a day-to-day basis. And if it would behoove these channels to once in a while do what will actually help others and cover the stories that really matter, I am willing to bet that Jimmy and many others that have these big platforms that make money on drama are not covering what's going on in Cop City, much less what is going on in most of the country that is desperately in need of help. So that's our mission, and that should be our mission. If the labor movement is the mission, then this has got to be part of it as well.
And we end with
enough is enough. Enough.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, guys.